This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
You are listening to the Voices of Wrestling podcast with your hosts, Joe Lanza.
X out and go listen to some boring podcast where they're afraid of their own shadow. Okay? Don't listen to Joe Lanza, because Joe Lanza's not changing.
And Rich Craich.
Give me a name. Who delivers this guy in a big spot?
Joe, don't yell at me. I like
in the big spot, who delivers better than this guy?
Stop yelling at me. I agree.
And we are live here on the Voice of Wrestling Flagship Podcast. I'm Rich Craich, alongside, as always, the King of Banter, Mr. Joe Lanza. And Joe, before I get to you, of course, this episode is brought to us by our friends at MyBookie. So presented by MyBookie. So thank them very much for that. We'll talk about them in a little bit, though. How's it going?
It only took you 3 weeks to screw that up.
Yeah, I know. It's tough because I have a set. I was pretty good the first few weeks, but I have a set little routine. I've been doing that routine for 7, 8, 9 years at this point, and they try to put themselves in there. It worked for 3 weeks, but yeah, I fucked it up this time. But this episode is presented by MyBookie, so you know that you get it, you understand. It's winning season, yada yada. You understand.
You get so nervous, Craig. It's all right. You messed it up. You made up for it. It's you move on. Doesn't help that I needle you about it.
Yeah, you're the assholes chanting "you fucked up" when I slip on the top rope or whatever. It's like hey, look,
True. The only wrestling chant I disapprove of.
The "you fucked up," yeah.
It's the only one I don't like. The other ones, you paid your ticket, say what you want. People get so bent out of shape with the chants. It's calm down.
Yeah. No, that's the only one that really, I know when I explained that one to Michelle once, she's like, well, that's not very nice. That's very rude. And I was like, yeah, I agree. She loves every other chant. Fuck that guy is her favorite chant. When anybody says fuck that guy or fuck the, she loves that one. But yeah, you fucked up. She's like, well, that's not very nice. He's trying very hard. I'm like, I know, you're right.
Putting their lives on the line.
Right. We always say that. I'm surprised they don't fuck up more. We're going to talk about this RevPro, this Callum Newman and Will Osprey opening sequence that those guys had in that RevPro match. And I don't know how they didn't, fuck at least 3 moves up. I mean, they do 7 moves in, 8 seconds, and I have no idea how they all work out as well as they do. It's wrestling is fucking incredible how there's not more fuck-ups every second.
These people are all incredible at what they do. And it's so the botches are so few and far between, at least the ones that are noticeable, to the fans' eyes. I'm sure there's wrestlers that are more difficult to work with than others if you are a wrestler, or maybe you have an eye for that kind of thing. But in terms of, big time botches, they're so few and far between. Yeah, the "you fucked up" always bothered me. And I think I was in the building when that came to be.
Oh, were you there for the famous
JT Smith falling on his head?
Yeah.
I mean, that may have been where that emanated from. I don't think I think that's the first ever.
At least where it gained steam amongst the whole crowd. There may have been one asshole screaming it, for a few weeks or months prior, but that was the one where everybody got in and was like, yeah, you know what? That guy did fuck up. We're going to chant that.
And I've heard many live "you fucked up" chants, in the ensuing 2 years or whatever in that building. And then you still hear it today occasionally, not that much, but you still get one occasionally. And it's the one chant I can't get with. It's other chants I think are silly. Sometimes people will chant "fight forever," and I'm like, this match isn't even that good. Calm down.
Right, yeah.
Or they'll chant, what's the other one people chant when it's really not always warranted? That. Sometimes I don't agree with the chant, but it doesn't wind me up the way it does other people. You'll go on Twitter and people are, hey, it's fucking fans with their chants. These NXT. Calm down. They're fans having fun. You buy a ticket, you go to a show, you have fun your way. You're not interfering with anybody else's fun or being rude or disruptive. I've never gotten wound up about any chant with the exception of "you fucked up."
Yeah. Oh, and also, someone in the chat room does correctly point out, "You deserve it" is one that you dislike as well.
Oh,
you have ranted about that one in the past, which rightfully so. Right. That one sucks.
I have to be fair. I don't like that one either.
That one does stink. Yeah.
Because a lot of times that one is what are we doing? Why are we throwing roses at the fucking Miz for winning the Intercontinental? Nobody cares. That one, I have to admit, that's the second one that does annoy me. Whoever pointed that out, good job out of you. But, look, I don't agree with most of these chants. I think they're silly, but they don't. What I'm saying is they don't wind me up. There's a lot of people that really angers them when fans chant things. Like, it ruins their experience, whether they're there live or they're watching on TV. I've never really understood that.
One that always gets me, and then we'll move on to some of our other topics, because we got a loaded show. There is a ton that we need to get to today, but one that always gets me, and it didn't always get me, but then it got overused tremendously, was the "You Still Got It" chant. Because then, like, a guy would come back and he was like 35, and they're like, "You still got it?" I'm like, well, yeah. It's like,
yeah,
they're trying to get to Road Dogg in like 2009. And I'm like, well, the dude's like under 40. Like,
yeah,
like, of course he still has it. He's like in the prime of his career. Like,
yeah, it'd be a bigger concern if he didn't have it.
Right. It's just like so weird when I hear that shit. Like, I remember the most famous, I want to say it, the one King of Trios that, like, X-Pac was like 1, 2, 3 Kid or whatever. I forgot who he teamed with. It was like him and him and like Jinsuke Shinsaki and someone else. I forgot who it was. And I remember people chanting "You Still Got It" to like 1, 2, 3 Kid. He's like 37 at that time. I'm like, well, yeah. He's been wrestling for 20 years. He's fine. Like, he's
like
still
riding a bike.
Exactly. He's like, he was still like an active wrestler. He just hadn't been in WWE for a few years. So that one has gotten me a little bit annoyed as of late. So
"This Is Awesome" was the other one I was trying to think of, where it's like, 8 times out of 10, it's really not that awesome. People just want to chant "This is awesome." But so what? It might be the only wrestling show that they go to all year. They want to chant "This is awesome" at Johnny Gargano. Let them. Don't know why it upsets me.
Yeah, I appreciate noise when I'm at a wrestling show versus no noise when I'm at a wrestling show. Because when
that's always been my argument. I'd rather have bad chants than a crowd that's dead just sitting on its hands. Because at least there's some kind of atmosphere and there's something going on.
All right, so let's get. We're going to lead off with this topic here, and then we got a ton to get to. As we've been tweeting out all day for people that follow us at Voices Wrestling. We have an ungodly ridiculous show. We have All Japan Pro Wrestling. We're going to talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling. We're going to talk about the G1 Climax. We're going to talk Dragon Gate. We forgot to put it in the show notes, but we are going to talk a little bit of Dragon Gate. Mostly how we're going to talk about it next week, but we're going to talk a little bit about Dragon Gate this week. United Wrestling Network, RevPro, Noah. Like, what other companies am I missing here? We've got like every company that has performed in pro. Ring of Honor, of course. Ring of Honor are one of our main topics we're going to talk about this week. Like, when we say, like, we used to have these classic, like back in the day, like 5-6 years ago, these classic like, spray to all fields voice wrestling flagships. This is one of those where it's like 12 topics about 12 different promotions, and I cannot wait. I'm really excited about that. But before we do that, Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. Each year, from the moment that this show began, we've talked Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. You were a voter many, many years ago. I jumped onto the bandwagon as well, jumped into the voting pool about 5 years or so ago, and we've always made that a central point of this show, whether it be the flagship or now moving everything to Patreon in terms of the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame audio. But the ballots did start coming out today. And so there's some interesting names and some interesting notes to bring up here. But initial thoughts before we kind of go through, new additions to the ballot and kind of some other stuff. What was your take when that Herbert S. Meltzer at Juno.com email came through the inbox?
Well, obviously Roman Reigns is going to be the big one this year that people debate endlessly. That's going to be a big one. He's not going to get in, and a lot of people are going to be upset about that. But we'll talk about that in a little more detail in a minute. So that jumped out at me. I also have a little bit of confusion. The Fabulous Ones are on the ballot for the first time, and I don't have a problem with the Fabulous Ones being on the ballot. They're an act that I will consider voting for. The problem is Dave has always had the stance for his Hall of Fame that you can't go in twice. It's kind of pointless to go in twice, and has made that argument when people have suggested nominating some tag teams when the singles wrestlers are already in. But Stan Lane is already in as with the Midnight Express. So here we are with Stan Lane and Steve Kern being on the ballot as the Fabulous Ones. So just a little bit of inconsistency there that I'm curious about, and I'm going to send him an email and try to get an explanation. And then a little confusion as well. There's a new person on the non-wrestler ballot, and only I would get pedantic about this.
You got to know, though. It's important.
It is important. Kevin Sullivan is on the non-wrestler ballot. Now, there's a 90% chance that's the pro wrestler from Boston, I Respect You Booker man, who became a booker, in the 90s, and everybody knows what I'm talking about.
The Taskmaster, basically.
Taskmaster, and he's on as a non-wrestler because obviously he didn't have a Hall of Fame career as a wrestler. I think anyone would agree with that. But he became a booker, and he was a booker during a very successful period of WCW. And, so him being on as a non-wrestler isn't completely absurd. The problem is there's 3 Kevin Sullivans in pro wrestling. There's the wrestler. There's the author who writes a lot of the WWF books, but I really doubt that it's him.
I would be very surprised if it's him, yes.
But then there's the production guy who has had a very long and successful career. He currently works for AEW, putting together their video packages. He left after a long stint with TNA/Impact, where he did a great job. He was with WWE many years ago. Doesn't he go all the way back to WCW?
I think so. Yeah. No, he's like an early I think he's like a early 90s WCW production guy that, he's been doing it for 30 plus years at this point, production wise. So it's not unreasonable that it's him. I see what you're saying.
I would say that there's like a chance that that's meant to be that guy, that someone asked for him. Because who would ask for Kevin Sullivan, the Taskmaster?
Yeah, like who in 2020 was like, you know what? What about the Taskmaster? Yeah.
I've really studied Kevin Sullivan's booking regime, and I feel like he needs to be on the ballot. Like it's probably him. But since there's 3 of these men with the same name in wrestling, I'd like some clarification there. I asked Meltzer on Twitter, but he gets added probably a million times a day. So
he's got to answer. He's got to answer about the Montreal Screwjob a few times a day and argue with one follower weirdos. So I don't know if he'll get to yours right away, but
outside of that, I mean, there is a ton of new names on the ballot. The Mexico ballot looks completely new because look, finally a bunch of those Mexico candidates got in. A couple dropped off, so the Mexico ballot has this fresh coat of paint. Nobody can complain about the Mexico ballot anymore because that logjam's gone. A bunch of people got in last year, and that looks fresh and new. And it really looks like a fresh ballot for the first time in about 5 years, because we had some people get in last year, and there are 20 plus new candidates, and that's what we're going to focus on today. Obviously, if we go over the whole ballot, it'll take up the whole 3 hours. So we'll focus on some of the new candidates and go from there. But last year, I mean, Death Missionaries, Ultimo Guerrero, Viano 3, and Dr. Wagner Jr. all got in. Finally, a lot of these Mexican candidates got in, and Volador Jr. dropped off with under 10%. So 5 off and a bunch of new people on in Mexico. And just to refresh everybody's memories, Gato got in last year, Jim Crockett Sr., and Bearcat Wright. Those were the non-Mexican entrants. There were 7 total. And dropping off last year were Dick Slater, George Steele, Jose Lothario, Naoki Sugabayashi, and as I mentioned, Volador Jr. But we're going to go through the new candidates because I think that's what's interesting, and we'll probably do some other audio at some point, whether here or behind the paywall, going over each category like we do every year.
Yeah, it's going to be tough this year, and I kind of semi-on-air production meeting, but usually there's not a G1 fucking climax going on while we're talking this stuff, so we'll figure it out, because we've had a bunch of people asking, because a bunch of people love it, because like I said, we do it every single year, and we've moved it over to the Patreon the last 2 years. People have really enjoyed that, because I think some people that don't really care about it, they can kind of avoid it, and they don't need to listen to it. But the ones that are into it, we get rave reviews for those shows every single year. So we're going to try to do everything we can. But yeah, obviously with G1 and N1 and Champion Carnival and a bunch of other stuff going on, it's going to be tight. But we'll do what we can to get those shows out there. Don't worry.
Hey, look, it's a good topic, and it brings up different and interesting conversations that we don't normally have. So I like talking about it.
It's some of my favorite shows to do. I love we hit record and we basically say names. We come up with, we talk for 2 hours, 3 hours about names and wrestling. It's awesome. It's just a great way to learn about the history of wrestling, talk about the history of wrestling. It's just, those are some of my favorite shows to do every year. So we're not skipping them. That is for sure.
And it doesn't have to necessarily, as a listener, be about the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
it could be a history lesson.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so U.S., Canada, bunch of new people on the ballot here. Brian Pillman, I can't believe he's never been on it, but he has never been on the ballot. I don't see him as a serious candidate at all. Now, he was someone who is a very interesting person historically, and obviously literally worked Eric Bischoff into a shoot to get out of his contract, and then leveraged that into a huge money deal with WWF. And who knows, if he doesn't flip that Humvee, maybe he becomes a money-drawing main event star. There was a very good chance of that. But that changed his career forever, and he was dead 2 years later. I don't see him as a serious candidate. Quick thoughts on Pillman.
Yeah, I know he's probably on there because I think Dave alluded to it a few months ago or something, or maybe even a year ago, that the Pillman biography that just came out about a year or so ago, he was thinking a lot of people would have read that, and maybe they have different thoughts about Brian Pillman, or they want to think about Brian Pillman again, or consider his candidacy. But I'm right with you. I not for a second do I think about Brian Pillman. There's obviously the potential there. You think that, you look at it and say, hey, if everything went right, yes, but not everything went right. Most went wrong. So I would say, yeah, definitely a no vote for me on Brian Pillman. And I tend to think he'll probably fall off the ballot after 1 year as well.
Love watching Brian Pillman. That early 90s stuff. And
flying Brian. Yeah, I can't beat it, man. I love those.
Some of the younger listeners who don't remember, he owned the wrestling world during that period where he was, doing the where he was working Bischoff and
loose cannon. The loose cannon era. You even mentioned it without even knowing earlier about the Booker Man, Kevin Sullivan thing. So
right. That, and then popping up in ECW. And then, I mean, it's hard to explain to people who weren't fans then or weren't old enough to understand what was going on. I mean, this guy just owned like the insider wrestling world, because you remember it was pre-internet too. So, very early internet, I'll say that. So he even showed up in like a small Georgia indie and cut a promo at one point. I think it was Peach State Wrestling or something like that during that time period to advance that. It was just read up on it. It's, when I get to that with Jovember to Remember, I'm probably going to do a full episode or maybe even 2 episodes on Loose Cannon Brian Pillman and really go super in depth. But just an incredible story that just captured the attention and the imagination of every insider fan at the time. Yeah,
and really, I mean, it confused even his coworkers, even his employers. They had no idea what the hell was going on, what was real, what was fake. Like he worked the fans, he worked the boys, he worked management. He was playing chess. Everybody else was playing checkers, basically at that
point. There
were
3 people in on it: Brian Pillman, Kim Woods, and Dave Meltzer.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
That's it. And even Meltzer at times didn't know what move Pillman was making. It's just Pillman. He advised him. He'd ask Meltzer advice. So it's like he was working everyone else. It's just next level shit that a lot of other people have tried to copy since, and no one has ever been able to replicate.
Right. And he resulted in the way he worked it to like a fucking $1 million contract with WWF. So it's incredible.
People copy the wrong aspects of it.
Right.
They're trying to fool the wrestlers in the back or the fans, but they're not making any more money off of it. His entire end game was leveraging himself into a gigantic money deal, and he succeeded. So, we say worked into a shoot. He literally worked Eric Bischoff into a shoot. He convinced, for people who don't know, he convinced Eric Bischoff to legitimately release him from his contract and convinced Bischoff that it would be a great way to work the locker room. And Bischoff fell for it. And then he was free to shop himself to both companies and then leverage a gigantic. It was just brilliant. The whole thing was brilliant. Kamala, obviously he's on there because he just passed away and people are re-investigating his career. We just talked about Kamala. This is a guy who was a very underrated draw, a mega draw the first time he would come through a territory, but then it was diminishing returns from there. And eventually with the bigger companies, he would end up being a comedy act by the end. You can only really draw money with him once, but as we also spoke about, probably a top 5 peak Hulk Hogan money drawing program in the 80s when he came through WWF the first time and had that first big feud with Hogan. We detailed it a few weeks ago when we did his obituary episode, where he worked with Hulk Hogan for what was it, Rich? Over a year,
almost a year plus. Actually, it was like a year and 4 or 5 months or whatever. It was wild. And in between that, he has Hogan goes to WrestleMania 3 and sells out the Pontiac Silverdome with Andre, and then goes right back to facing Kamala immediately afterwards. It's like, damn.
Yeah, Kamala was Hogan's house show program before and after WrestleMania 3 because it was drawing so well everywhere, and they just stuck with it. And then Kamala, he didn't even get on the WrestleMania 3 card. I don't know if he happened to be hurt or whatnot, but he didn't even end up on that card. But, despite the fact he was drawing huge money with Hogan everywhere, what bad timing. Because that was the year they were going to finally pull the trigger on the Andre match. Probably would have been Kamala at WrestleMania 3. It's crazy when you look and think about that. But he's not someone that on the surface I would vote for if I dig a little deeper. And he's an even better draw than I already think he is, then maybe. Obviously a very memorable gimmick. And one that's been copied ad nauseum over the years, both as a positive and a negative, I guess. But yeah, on the surface, I don't think. Now, remember, for people who might be new listeners, I don't vote for anybody. I am a hard marker.
You stink. Yeah.
I think you have to be a legitimate, you got to be an icon for me to get into the Hall of Fame. I'm a hard marker. I want it to remain elite. So to me, that's not Kamala.
Yeah, the way I look at Kamala, and I'm making fun of you, but I tend to agree as well. Like, there's something to be said for the draw. There's something to be said for, him, but it's also, he's against Hulk Hogan too. I'm not saying that like Hogan didn't have dud draws, but it's like you're against Hulk Hogan in 1987. Like, not drawing well is probably a prerequisite and something you just need a baseline do. Just don't fail is basically what you need to do with Hulk Hogan in 1987 or whatever. But to his credit, he didn't fail. There was a good program. It went many, many, many months, as we mentioned, a year plus. The problem, though, with me and Kamala, and will always be the problem with me and Kamala, is just that his in-ring was just not very good. We talked about it, in our obituary episode. He made the most out of limited skills, but at the end of the day, they were limited skills. Like, you wash it down, you look at it at its core, like, he's a pretty terrible pro wrestler. And that, a terrible in-ring pro wrestler. I think, obviously, there's multiple aspects to being a pro wrestler, and I think he was able to enhance some of the other parts of it. But yeah, bell to bell, which is, part of the criteria, he's just not a very good worker. So yeah, I'm with you. He's not a slam dunk enough in the draw for me to say that I would vote for him. So I'm not going to be voting for one Kamala. So
he was such a bad pro wrestler that's how he ended up with the gimmick.
Yes, right.
Because they had to figure out he went up to Memphis and they just wanted to figure out something to do with this guy because he was terrible. So, and he owned the gimmick, and he just, in terms of performing to a gimmick, he's upper tier. I mean, there's very few historically. So there's many ways to slice it, but my first instinct is no. Kevin Nash is back on the ballot. He was on it way back in 1998 and promptly fell off with under 10%. I feel like he's been on before. I don't believe this. Am I Mandela affecting it? I feel like he's been on this ballot
potentially.
Before,
yeah, I don't know. I think it may have been that Dave's weird about that too. There's some guys that just never go on, and like Dave doesn't know that they didn't go on until someone tells him. The famous Jimmy Hart story, where it's like, "Hey, where's Jimmy Hart?" And he's like, "Oh, right, yeah, Jimmy Hart, of course." Like that had to have happened with Kamala, but the source we have, like I can tell you, the person that we're looking at, the spreadsheet that we're looking at, if that person dives as deep into the old observers as you possibly can. So I believe it.
No, he does a good job.
Yeah,
just
I believe.
Detlef.
Yeah, Detlef, who's in our Discord and provides us many good stuff, old observers, old other stuff like that. But yeah, he says no, so I totally trust him because.
So let's talk about Nash and Hall then, because Hall is back on after 1998 too. But I could swear I've seen these names on the ballot before. Regardless, they're back on this year, but they're back on as singles wrestlers. I do feel like they'd have a slightly stronger case as a tag team, only because of the they came to WCW and changed the business.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And you cannot discount that. I'm not saying they should go in as a tag team because they drew millions of dollars as a tag team and had all these, they weren't the fucking Midnight Express bell to bell, but as a unit, they changed the business. As singles wrestlers, I think Scott Hall has zero case. I mean, like less than zero case. He was never even a top guy anywhere that he worked as a singles wrestler ever in his career. So, and he wasn't any kind of great worker. He was a good, competent worker. He wasn't a great worker, and he was never a top guy. Nash was a top guy, but he was mostly a failure.
Yeah, an abject failure as a top guy for sure.
So, especially, the Diesel Championship run, we all know that was not a business success at all. In fact, it was one of the worst WWF Championship runs of all time from a business aspect. WCW gets a little murkier, but I get the sense that their best cases together as part of the Outsiders. They're not on the ballot together. And quite honestly, I don't think I'd vote for the Outsiders either.
Yeah, I'm probably a no vote on both of those guys. I mean, your yes vote has to be for the NWO. has to be for, what they did there. I guess if you thought Razor Ramon or whatever was an unbelievably great worker during, the 3-4 years that he was in WWF, maybe that would be the vote for you. But like, I don't see how you could seriously do that. And I'm with you. Like if this was Kevin Nash, Scott Hall as the NW, like whatever classification you want to use, that I would definitely think about. Okay. At its very core, they completely changed wrestling, got WCW, which had never turned a profit forever, up to being the top company in the world. And obviously there was some other things that happened, but they were kind of the catalyst. They lit the fuse. They kind of got it going. But individually, yeah, there's no way, because you can poke holes in Scott Hall's career, the lack of longevity, the lack of, I think a ton of truly, truly great matches. As you said, never a top guy. And then Kevin Nash, he was a top guy, but an abject failure in WWF. And WCW, his top stuff wasn't very good either when he was a star, and worse yet, when he became the booker and got some power, they basically siphoned every fan off the company pretty quickly, and then Vince Russo came in and knocked a few rungs off, a few more million off until they were out of business. But should not be understated how horrible Kevin Nash's run as booker was as well, where you look at the year-to-year data, the month-to-month data, by the summer and the spring of 1999, he had just decimated that company in a lot of ways, with some pretty terrible bookings. So yeah, Kevin Nash is an easy no vote for me. Scott Hall, an easy no vote for me. Together, I'd at least consider it, but I'd also probably say no too. So
I'd put the NWO in as a unit, maybe that original grouping
of
those two plus Hogan. I'd vote that yes in a second, but it's just not the way this Hall of Fame is structured. Maybe with the fabulous ones going on this year, that changes. I don't know. Kevin Von Erich is an easy no from me.
Come on.
It's kind of similar. I mean, if you want to put them on as a package, if you want to put the three primary brothers on, Kevin, Kerry, and David, I think that's a better argument than any of them by themselves. David died when he was 24 or 25 or something like that, and just doesn't have the longevity. Never got he was going to be NWA World Champion, okay, but he died. So he never got his big run and just, didn't have any longevity. Kerry has the best case of the three, but I don't see Kerry Von Erich as a Hall of Famer. So there's no way I can see Kevin as a Hall of Famer. He wasn't as a big a star on his own as the other two, even though he's my personal favorite bell to bell. Now, the guys he worked with would disagree because he worked stiff and just beat the shit out of everybody because his father was the promoter and he wasn't going to get in any trouble. So he'd get in the ring and just fucking stiff everyone. But that's why his shit looks so good to me as a fan. But no, Kevin Von Erich is a no vote from me.
Yeah, I can't see a case really being made for Kevin Von Erich on any level whatsoever. Like you said, if it was the Von Erichs or a collection of Von Erichs, then yeah, of course you'd make a vote for those guys. But yeah, on his own, Kevin Von Erich, it's pretty tough to come up with a case. Other than good Hawaii photos, good photos of his house is about the only Kevin Von Erich take I could.
I am so envious of that man's life. I mean, he lives in paradise. And just
doesn't own shoes. Doesn't own shoes. He just walks out to his creek where there's just fresh fish, and he's like, caught this today at the creek. I'm like, fuck you.
All kinds of crabs, fish, fucking grows his own fucking shit. He literally does not wear shoes unless he boards an airplane.
Yeah.
He doesn't own shoes. It's some life that man leads.
Yeah, well, given what happened in his life, I guess I don't know. Would I take what Kevin Von Erich went through for what he has now? I don't know. I'd consider it, but no. I think I think I'd probably prefer to not have all of my family die tragically, but
tragically as well. Which
those
is why
crabs do look good though. Those are big crabs. I will say that. So.
That's why he's got all the money. It's there's nobody else left. Rick and Scott Steiner as a tag team, they've been on multiple times over the years. Somebody asked for them to be put back on. Look, these guys are like patron saints of dumb jock wrestling, and for that they have my eternal respect. You want to talk about guys just stiffing people in the ring? They make Kevin Von Erich, look like he's working light. Right. I mean, they just went in there and
Kevin Von Erich looked like Lance Storm, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Steiners would just legitimately beat people up because nobody could take them in a shoot. I mean, they were just the two toughest motherfuckers in the business, and they were going to work stiff. And if you didn't like it, what were you going to do about it? That was their attitude, And as a result, their matches looked real fucking cool. I wasn't the one getting dropped on my head. So, but as a Hall of Fame tag team, I don't know. They were never headliners in the territory. They were tag team champions everywhere they went. Nice little upper mid-carders. But I can't vote them for a Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. I can't do it.
Yeah, I want to. I really want to. Like, I'm gonna put a little line next to them because I would like to try to convince myself to vote for the Steiners as a Hall of Fame team. I want to, but it's a hard case to make. It's really tough to make. I've seen some people say that maybe, Scott Steiner on his own. I don't know if that's true either. I don't know that, like, Scott Steiner on his own, even though obviously there was some fun runs. He's main eventing WCW. He's got a little bit of runs in, TNA and stuff. He's a fun, gifable wrestler. He's kind of a meme and that sort of stuff. But, like, otherwise, like, as in terms of being a single star, I don't know if Scott Steiner really, like, has enough legs on his own. But I do think the Steiner brothers, as a combination, I don't want to say immediately no. I'm probably going to go no when it's all said and done, but I want to try to convince myself that they deserve it. So I'm not immediately scratching them out, but probably going to be a no. But I want to convince myself of that right now. Right at this very moment, I cannot tell myself I'm definitively a no on the Steiner brothers. So
Scott Steiner's not a Hall of Fame pro wrestler. Come on. I mean, I see no argument for that.
Yeah, he became a top star when there was literally nobody left in WCW and nobody wanted to come to work anymore. And he did fine. He did pretty well in that role, but, like, there's that. And then, WWE was a fucking miserable failure. Partially because of WWE, wanting him not to be Scott Steiner when they signed Scott Steiner. But, still, he didn't really adapt to that area very well. And then he goes to Impact or TNA or whatever, and he's fine, but he's kind of more of a meme and more of a joke than he is anything else as a single
That's
star,
it.
so.
He's very entertaining, and I've loved watching the guy over the years, but where was he ever a difference maker? The answer is never. Okay, so we'll bounce over to historical US and go through some of these. It looks like Bob Armstrong is back on. We obviously know why. I think that's a career that really needs to be investigated. I'm going to take a long, hard look at Bob Armstrong. He worked in a lot of places that didn't get a lot of hype. He worked in a lot of places that didn't covet magazine coverage at the time, so they didn't send pictures to the after mags and things like that because they just didn't care. The Fullers didn't care about that kind of thing. They cared about making money in their territories. They didn't care about magazine covers or getting attention. So I think a lot of Bob Armstrong's career, because he didn't really veer away from those places in the South, he never really went to Jim Crockett for a run. He never came to WWF for a run. He never went out to California for a run. So because of that, because he worked mostly in these Fuller territories and Georgia before that, and when he was a younger wrestler, a good portion of his career is obscured in history, and there's just not a lot of knowledge and there's not a lot of tape. And he's someone who, if you really study him, it might come out that he was like, this enormous babyface draw all this time, and maybe people don't appreciate it. So he's someone that I can't speak super intelligently on now, but he's someone who I'm going to investigate.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's one that when I look at the new historical ones, there's some guys that I have, like, no clue, and even if I try to learn about it, I don't know if I'd quite be able to appreciate. Bob Armstrong is somebody that's relatively newer that I think I can at least try to take a look at. So he's definitely one that I circled. And I should note as well that you did skip over Roman Reigns on the new for US, but you probably should, because we're going to do a separate episode about US and Canada, and that Roman Reigns part will probably take about an hour. So let's...
That was accidental. I mean, I can give you my quick thought. I can give you my take on Roman Reigns in 20 seconds.
Okay, let's do that, because I think it's a little bit more nuanced, and I think there will be some discussion about it. But for here, we'll do our quick takes on it.
I cannot justify voting for someone who ultimately, when you think about his career, the biggest theme is failure. I mean, he's viewed as a failure. All of his singles pushes failed. You think about Roman Reigns' career, and it's not all of these great accomplishments. It's, oh, man, he never got over the hump. How can I vote for someone when that is the theme of their career to this point? Plus, he's 35 years old, which is why he's on the ballot to begin with, and he has the whole second act of his career in front of him. What's the rush to even think about this guy? He's very similar to those New Japan candidates from last year. Your Okadas, Naitos, Ibushis, people like that. I'm not ready to vote for those guys yet. They have half of their careers in front of them. If Roman Reigns retired today, he's not anything close to a Hall of Famer. But, he has half his career left, and things could change. Right now, though, you think of Roman Reigns, you think of a guy that got booed out of buildings, never lived up to any of the pushes they gave him, and ultimately his career, at least by the criteria of the Hall of Fame, I'd like to have his bank account, is a failure.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way as well. Roman Reigns is and I think, when we do a breakout episode, I do want to talk about it a little bit more, because we can kind of project a little bit and get in a little bit more nuance about his case. But like for me, it's like absolutely a no-go right now, because it's like, he's still got, presumably, fingers crossed, health aside, another 5, 10, 15 years ahead of him. I mean, he's barely scratched the surface of what he is, and if you do take it for what it is so far over the last 5 years, as you said, he's been a failure. Like, his in-ring is I think he's a pretty solid enough wrestler, but like, as you said, the overarching theme of his entire career has been failure to really become a top star, failure to break out to the mainstream, failure to, be presented as the top guy in the company, being presented as the top guy in the company, with failure to really make that so, and make it obvious, and make it, where the fans accept him as a top guy, for better, for worse. And like, especially right now, voting for him for the Hall of Fame is like, dude, we have this heel run could absolutely transform his career, and he's a no doubter in 2 years or whatever, so it's just like, right now it's definitely pretty weird to even talk about him and even think about Roman Reigns' entire career. So I'm an easy no vote right now. And that's not to say he never will be in. Like you said, he's still got a lot of his career in front of him, and he'll get back on the ballot at some point. Like, even if he falls off right now, there's no doubt that in 5, 10, 15 years he'll be back on this ballot again. So just wait on Roman Reigns is what I would say. But I have a little bit more arguments. I have more things that we can kind of talk about when we have the time. So we'll do that in a breakout episode. So.
He's the kind of guy where if you don't understand the criteria, you're probably like, what do you mean? He has to be a Hall of Famer.
He's a kayfabe first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, he main evented 4 WrestleManias or whatever the hell it is. He's won all these Royal Rumbles. He's a 9-time champion. Like, kayfabe Hall of Fame, no doubter. He'd get into the WWE Hall of Fame tomorrow if he retired. Like, tomorrow.
Of course.
If he had to retire because of issues, they would say immediately Roman Reigns is going into the WWE Hall of Fame this year, right now. It's no doubt he's a kayfabe Hall of Famer. But Wrestling Observer Hall of Famer, no, I don't think so.
Rich, run me down on 1950s Hawaiian star Bobby Bruns.
Oh, where do you want to start?
Okay, so I don't think Rich or I are the people to go to for your Bobby Bruns hot takes. So I know who he is, and I'm vaguely aware of his career, but I wasn't there in 1949 when he won the
I wish
Hawaiian tag team titles from so we're gonna skip Bobby Bruns. Haystacks Calhoun, first time on the ballot. Now listen, this is one of the most famous wrestlers ever.
Yeah.
You ask someone on the street to name 10 pro wrestlers, even in 2020, there's a good chance the name Haystacks Calhoun is coming up.
Yeah, passes the mom test and the dad test for sure. My dad, I remember seeing a picture of him in a magazine, a wrestling magazine. He goes, "Oh, Haystacks Calhoun." I was like, "What? How do you know who that is?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I used to watch him all the time." So yeah, he passes the casual fan test for sure.
Yeah, because he was 500 pounds and dressed like a hillbilly, and he had a gimmick. And it was, so he was an early gimmick wrestler and all that, but he's a guy where I'd have to talk to Matt Farmer and see if he ever actually drew any money. And if he did, I'd consider voting for him. An enormously famous pro wrestler, that's a guy where, I just don't know enough about, was he just a traveling sideshow kind of guy who would come in and work third from the top against the local heel? Or was he a legitimate main event star in the places that he went? I don't know the answer to that. Jerry Briscoe is on the ballot for the first time. Obviously, Jack Briscoe gets all the accolades. Jerry getting on the ballot here. I don't see Jerry Briscoe as a Hall of Famer. Mr. Wrestling 2 has been on the ballot 1,000 different times. He's back on it again.
He went away in 2018, and then now he died. So now he's back on again. It's like, Dave, I understand. I know why Dave puts guys that recently died back on. I understand. But
I mean,
come on,
that's the reason. But now here's the thing: he got a good chunk of votes before he. So I think, getting him because of his death, he'll probably be on it 15 more years and just hover around 45, 50%. If he's gonna get in, it's got to be the year of the death bump, though. That's when you got to make it happen. Miguel Perez Sr. on the ballot for the first time, also in this historical category. Oley Anderson is back. He's been on it before. You might have more success with Oley either as part of a tag team or as a non-wrestler, to be honest, than as a singles wrestler. So that's why that one, I can't vote for him as a Hall of Famer as a singles wrestler. I can't do it. And Oley Anderson's a guy who, over the years, I've come to appreciate his work a lot more. I watched those old, 80s Crockett tapes, and he's a standout. I mean, his shit is snug. It looks good. It feels real. He's an ass kicker. He's no nonsense. I love his style. But his best stuff is probably as a tag team wrestler. And I think, all those years working in front offices and whatnot, I think as a singles wrestler might be the worst facet of his case. Pampiro Firpo, another guy who just passed away. So, someone who obviously I'm aware of and know a little bit about his career, but I can't sit here and tell you the ins and outs of his career without studying it first.
Yeah. We'll try to get someone who can, though, so we'll see what we can do there.
We talked about the fabulous ones already. A team that I would definitely consider voting for. I mean, they have been copied forever. I mean, they set a template for that kind of tag team. They weren't together a super long time, but hugely influential, obviously. And a team that, there's not a lot of tag teams in the Hall of Fame, and I think they're on the short list of teams that you'd have to consider. I mean, they legit worked on top, whereas a team like the Steiners never did. So, and then the Masked Interns with Dr. Ken Ramsey on the ballot for the first time too. Now, again, before my time, before Rich's time, and obviously it's another one of these acts that surely most of you have heard of, but maybe not know a ton about. So I like that we're getting more tag teams on this thing. Black Gordman and Great Goliath, another getting on for not the first time. They fell off quickly in 2014. So I had skipped over them. But I like seeing more tag teams because we've talked about this before. I think there's a dearth of tag teams in the Hall of Fame. And I don't know why that is. But it's good to see them because this will spark conversation about tag teams. And I think it'll get a few more in as we move along. But let's move through this quickly. Japan, there's some newcomers. Takaake Kadani is on the ballot for the first time, and I think he's got a shot at getting in. With the way Gato got in last year, and Kadani gets a lot of the credit for helping turn New Japan around on this fantastic run that they're on. I think he's a viable candidate. So
yeah, no, for sure. We'll definitely have some good discussions about him, and I think we even had discussions about him last year, even though he wasn't on the ballot yet. We had some discussions about when he did get on the ballot, if he was a guy that we would vote for, and I think we were kind of split on it, but I think we both kind of said that, we'll definitely think about it because deserves a lot of credit. Like there's a lot of guys that are getting credit for New Japan's return, but this is a company that was like literally at death's door many, many, many times, and he resurrected it to the point where they became a global, the first real. I would say the first Japanese, company, and maybe people could have some arguments here and there, but to really break into the mainstream of America too, where people know, like your casual fans know what New Japan Pro Wrestling is, not just your hardcores. So that's definitely something. Yeah, and whether he gets 100% credit for that, most credit, but he gets some credit for that for sure as kind of the businessman behind that. So he'll be a very, very interesting one that definitely I have a circle around right now to kind of think about.
Kyoko Inui, which is a Joshi wrestler, second tier from the hot period of Joshi in, I guess, the early 90s, I want to say, but someone who has never stopped wrestling. That doesn't mean much today with the state of Joshi, but she was around during the peak and definitely, minimum one of those, all the first tier Joshi stars from that period, they're in.
Yeah, and she's got a match of the year as well, a match of the year in 1995 against Minami Toyota, so... that's an interesting one because you look at past matches of the years. You look at we talked about it before. If you're a wrestler of the year, if you have a match of the year, like you kind of have to be in the running for sure. You can't immediately say no if that person participated in the best match in any given year. Like they have to be in the mix for sure.
You can't instantly hand wave this candidate, especially if you've never heard of her. Obviously, she peaked 30 years ago, 25 years ago. So if you're younger, you might not know anything about her. But you cannot hand wave her as a candidate. And then Joe Higuchi is on the ballot for the first time. Obviously goes back many years. Many people would probably recognize Joe Higuchi as a referee for years and years and years. All Japan, front office person. Yeah, I really have to investigate what some of his responsibilities were behind the scenes. And then jump to Noah with everybody else, and maybe some of our younger listeners remember him hanging around Noah shows more so than, refereeing matches in 80s All Japan. But, interesting person to have on the ballot for the first time there. But those are the 3 new candidates in Japan. Mexico is chock full of new candidates, like we mentioned, that Rich and I know nothing about. I'll just run down the names. You could stop me, Rich, if you're an expert.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, I'm going to stop you on one of these names when you come. I'll let you know when I want to talk. So.
Well, I could give you a little bit of something on Jerry Estrada and Parita Morgan. I mean, because I've seen those guys wrestle a billion times. But as far as Alberto Munoz and La Fiera,
Rito Romero, I was gonna talk about Rito Romero, but I guess
Yeah,
we'll wait.
No, I mean, these are guys where you got to get the Cubs fan on, or Matt Farmer.
Yeah,
or
Ricardo.
Like
maybe we'll get Ricardo back on there.
Ricardo,
too, so, yeah.
and because I learned a ton on those lucha shows that we've done about people like this that I wouldn't be able to tell you the first thing about. I couldn't tell you anything about Alberto Munoz other than he's on this ballot today. I couldn't tell you the first thing. And I saw people like Jerry Estrada at the tail end of their careers where, that's not really fair either. So we won't spend a ton of time on that. As far as the world miscellaneous, Adrian Street on the ballot for the first time, probably because that doc came out on WWE Network.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And obviously a hugely influential wrestler, sort of setting the template for that kind of wrestling character, sort of the flamboyant, the gay undertones and all that, which, we've seen characters like that. Now look, Adrian Street wasn't Gorgeous George, obviously, you'd have to point to, but Adrian Street came along and was sort of a derivative of that and a little different, like we talked about at the time, sort of a flamboyant character where it was like, I'm still going to punch you in the face. If you think I'm some sort of sissy or something, that's where you're wrong. I'm tough as nails. It was kind of a different take on the character, whereas Gorgeous George was more cowardly and those sorts of things. But definitely hugely influential and never straight up presented as gay. It was more, he's always had Miss Linda, but the idea was, I'm playing head games with you.
Right.
I'm comfortable in my own skin. You're uncomfortable with me because you're a homophobe. See, that was the idea.
Yeah, and I'm going to use that to my advantage. You're freaked out because
right.
I'm wearing a boa and I got makeup on and all this sort of stuff. It's your fault because I'm out here. I'm going to beat your ass. So, that's your fault. It's not that I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just being me. You're the idiot.
Just being me.
Yeah, right.
You could. I don't care who you think I have sex with. You have the problem here.
Right.
Right. So he was his whole deal was that he was like super tough. Like he'd punch you in the mouth. So very interesting. And then Wayne Bridges. Rich, give us a little something on Wayne Bridges.
Oh, where do I even begin? You know what? Let's wait for the breakout show because we'll be here all day if I tell you all my Wayne Bridges stories. So,
yeah.
I can tell you he died on March 8th, 2020. He was known for wrestling, All-Star Wrestling in the 1980s. That's all. He's got a one-line. He's got a one-line Wikipedia, which does not bode well for Wayne Bridges' potential berth in the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. So,
yeah. So. That was Wayne Bridges. And you gotta remember,
he was half of the NWA Vancouver Canadian Tag Team Champions with Dan Caraft. So
you got to remember too with Adrian Street, that was like the 70s and 80s, the late 70s, early 80s into the mid 80s, when the world wasn't quite as progressive as it is today. So
yeah. Oh no, for sure.
It was a real heat seeker of a gimmick from that perspective too, preying on people's irrational fears and all that. So. It's not like, it may not sound like sort of this risky, living on the edge sort of gimmick now, but then it was a whole different ball game. So, and then the non-wrestler category, we already talked about. Well, I guess Bobby Bruns is on here as a non-wrestler, not even for his wrestling career. So I have to admit, I know nothing about.
Well, that totally changes everything. Yes.
Well, he must have been a promoter or something.
Yeah,
So I don't have to look in. I don't listen. Wrestling is vast. You can't know about all of it. And just admit when you don't know something. Kevin Sullivan, who we talked about, if it is the one we think it is, I can't see him as a Hall of Famer as a non-wrestler. And then two interesting ones that we can talk briefly about: Tony Schiavone.
Mm-hmm.
I lean no.
I'm leaning no as well. Yeah, it's a tough case to make for Schiavone. I've always liked his work, or most of the time I've liked his work, but there was periods too where he was pretty fucking terrible. There were periods where he clearly hated wrestling and wanted to leave and couldn't wait to get out. And I just don't know if, like, you talk about it, and we talk about this with any sort of announcer, ring announcer, this sort of stuff is like, where are they above your kind of average? Where do they in your value over replacement announcer? Where does Tony Schiavone land? And I like Tony Schiavone, but I don't know that he's like, head and shoulder. He's not Gordon Solie. You know what I mean? Like, he's not this iconic figure in the world of announcing. So I would probably vote no on Tony Schiavone. I guess I could listen to an argument, but I would think he's definitively a no. So,
and then Mike Tenay, which, again, I loved Mike Tenay in WCW as the information man.
By the way, he can host Mike, if you're listening, you can host a podcast on this very network. Please do that.
He was totally miscast in TNA as a play-by-play man. It's just stunning to me that they never brought in a real play-by-play man and put him in a more comfortable role. Just as a historian and all that, there's a lot of layers there with Tenay, but I don't know. I can't vote for him for a Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I wish I could. I really, really wish I could, because I love Mike Tenay, one of my favorites of all time. The Impact run kind of stunk because it just, like you said, he was completely miscast. And the WCW stuff was really good, but it never felt like they fully used his abilities. If he worked for a different company, a better company, his knowledge would have been really used, I think a little bit more for a positive versus, like Dusty Rhodes and Bobby Heenan just making fun of him the whole time. And, because that's essentially what it ended up being. And I think he was really good at what he did, and I enjoyed it, but it's not enough to be a Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. Again, like we talk about with Tony Schiavone, like the history of wrestling can be told without Mike Tenay, I don't think. And it sucks, because I really love Mike Tenay, and I wish I could vote for him, but yeah, there's just no way that...
For a guy who was just a huge wrestling fan and a wrestling historian who wasn't a professional broadcaster or anything like that, he really became a pretty decent play-by-play.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, he was totally miscast, but he was like pretty damn good for given on that. Like, again, like, value over replacement announcer. He's not incredible, but like that's like you and me becoming like play-by-play guys. Like, I don't want to be a play-by-play guy. I don't think Mike Tenay ever wanted to be a play-by-play guy, but he was damn good at what he did. All in all.
Yeah. So I got to give a lot of respect for that. I mean, his role in WCW was probably easy for him. They would just fire questions at him like, who's this guy in the mask? And he'd give a couple. I mean, that's his wheelhouse. But to just become a play-by-play guy when you've never been a broadcaster, I mean, that's, at least to my knowledge, he was never a broadcaster, is pretty admirable. But those are all the new candidates. And like we said, we probably hear a lot of Hall of Fame content in some form, over the next, ballots, you got to submit by October 15th, but then they don't get announced forever. Like sometimes like January.
Yeah. So,
or even later. So there's plenty of time to talk about it. And we will do plenty of that, but we just wanted to go over some of the new candidates very quickly too. I wanted to mention who falls off if they don't get the requisite 50%. And that would be the perpetually on the bubble Jun Akiyama and Don Owen. Don Owen had 59% last year and was probably only a vote or two away. Jun Akiyama seems like he's been on the cut line for a half decade. I vote for both of those men. Sergeant Slaughter is on the cut line this year. And a little more confusion once again, Rich. Kerry Von Erich is on the cut line. And I don't see him on the ballot itself. I could be wrong. Let me look again.
Dave, no, I think you're
Which
right.
tells me.
Oh no, he is. He's there. He's in the modern U.S. Canada. Yeah.
Okay, I thought maybe Dave typed Kevin by mistake instead of Kerry, and then people thought Kevin was going on. But yeah, they're both on there. So Kerry's on. Kevin is on the cut line along with Sergeant Slaughter, Don Owen, Jun Akiyama, and Chavo Classic, Chavo Guerrero Sr., who I can't see getting in, is also on the cut line. Owen and Akiyama, they're knocking on the door. Slaughter's a guy I could see being on the cut line, getting a big push, and maybe getting in. Especially
he was 51. He was 51% last year. So yeah,
he's a serious candidate.
He doesn't need much. He doesn't need much more.
He can get in. I think he's a serious candidate, and Kerry Von Erich is not getting in. So that's the Hall of Fame next year. Rich, I think is Young Bucks.
Oh, I think it's Young Bucks. I believe it's Okada jumps on as well. That's going to be
Well, Okada's a slam dunk.
Yeah.
I don't even think
All
that
the
one's
Bucks are slam dunks
controversial.
too. Don't even anybody who says otherwise are fucking idiots. They're so clearly slam dunks to me.
I will vote for the Young Bucks without a second thought. I mean,
like a brand new successful primetime wrestling show was created on their backs. Like, what are we doing?
If you don't think they're one of the greatest tag teams
just
of all
on
time,
wrestling, even if AEW never got created, like they're still there.
So easy. I think Seth Rollins goes on next year. I think,
God,
Moxley has to be coming up because I think he's turning either 35 or has the 15 years in. So next year potentially is super interesting with a lot of new people on the ballot. Send them. Oh, they held him up. Now they got him in a rundown. All right, we got one run out of it. Damn it. That is bad base running. And I might have a few dollars on this. All right.
That's a good segue. Because, Joe, What time is it right now?
It's winning season.
You're goddamn right it's winning season. At MyBookie, it's fall, it's late summer, and at MyBookie, it is winning season. Winning season means doubling your first deposit. Winning season means free bets, super contest, Survivor, and more. At MyBookie, winning season is all about your chance to win big, just as Joe was trying to do there. Are we talking Reds? Or do you not bet on your own team? Are you not like Charlie Hustle? Or I
got a lot of action tonight. I got some parlays going. I got a couple bucks on the Reds. I got money spread all over the place.
You been betting on my White Sox at all?
Every time Dylan Cease pitches, because he's been a hot hand for him.
Yeah.
He ceases to allow runs.
Yeah, best team in the AL, baby.
Yes. We play it this weekend.
Oh, that's right. Going down.
You might nail our put the final nail in our playoff chance in our playoff coffin this weekend.
We got. I think the magic number for the White Sox is 3 right now. So 2 or 3. So we'll clinch it in Cincinnati.
I think you should lay down.
Where anybody wants to celebrate, Cincinnati, Ohio.
I say you lay down. I mean, you don't need those games.
You're right.
So,
You're right.
You set your rotation for the postseason.
Right. Get some of the taxi squad out there, but
send Gio Gonzalez out there.
Oh no, please don't. Anyway, with MyBookie, you can bet NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, Major League Baseball playoffs coming up very soon there, UFC, NFL is in full swing, and then some. The craziest sports summer and sports fall of your lifetime is here. It's simple. You make your picks, you win big, you collect your cash, you invest in your intuition, Joe. You select from hundreds of futures bets. You can bet on games in real time with MyBookie's live betting as well. You can put that big brain of yours to good use. Just use promo code VOW and double your first deposit. New players get up to $1,000 in free play, designed to add more excitement to the sports you love and the games you bet. Thousands of cross-sport wagers, props, parlays await. Sign up now to bet with the best and celebrate your victory. Your winning season begins today only at MyBookie. And again, new customers receive a 1,000% deposit match. Double your first deposit up to $1,000. You put in $100, they give you $100. You put in $1,000, they give you $1,000. 100% deposit match, but only if you use that promo code VOW. Will they double your first deposit? So again, MyBookie, MyBookie.ag, the MyBookie app, whatever you want to do, use promo code VOW. 100% deposit match up to $1,000. So cannot beat that for sure. All right, let's get to. You want to talk G1 Climax?
Yeah, let's do this.
Grade 1 Climax. So all right, we're gonna pick every single match right now. September 19th. I'm just kidding. We're not gonna do that. That'd be
I am never doing
radio.
People want us to do that every year.
Oh my God. Can you imagine October 3rd, and I have to tell you, okay, how many points do we have for Osprey right now? Oh, he's at 8 points. All right. It would be terrible. It would be so bad.
Listen, there's a lot of shows that do that, and I just, God bless them. That's what they do on their shows. I feel like that would be tedious and boring if we did that. And plus, it wouldn't come out the way that I want it to come out. I couldn't go through every match and then get like the results that I think are going to happen.
Well, that's like, and this is what I always do. I fill out my, again, Voice of Wrestling. We're doing G1 Climax Pick'em again. VoiceOfWrestling.com. You can find all the details there. Some great prizes this year as well. But like, yeah, what I'll do is I'll end my ballot and I'll be like, all right, there we go. And I'm like, wait, Goto's not getting 16 points. Like, what the hell am I doing? What? And then I have to go back and like retroactively like retcon it and give like Goto. I'm like, all right, now Goto, I guess Goto's not beating this guy. Or like, you know, one year I ended up like last year I had Shingo with like 14. I'm like, okay, get out of here. Like, he's not winning 14.
Yeah.
You know, he's not getting 14 points. So like we would have to do that, get to the end, and then have to retcon like 15 matches to get to the actual numbers we want to get to. So excruciating radio, and I do not want to do it. So
it's just my brain isn't wired for that kind of thing. Just, you know, picking every match and everything. Honestly, I'd be bored halfway through the second day. I can't get into that. But
well, you should get into it at voiceofwrestling.com, by the way, if you're listening to this. Not you, Joe.
Yeah.
The listener.
Yeah.
The listener. If you're not joining the Pick'em, you have to do it now. September 19th is when it starts. We lock them immediately once that first show starts. And don't be a trickster. It's very easy to tell when you're trying to get your ballot in past the 19th, mostly because you're perfect with all your picks. But we get people that try to slide in like on September 20th, September 23rd, and they're not clever enough because they're like, oh, hey, here's my perfect ballot that I sent in 3 days. It has timestamps, so don't even waste your time. I know when you send in a late ballot, so don't even bother. Get it in before September 19th. I cannot even tell you how many people try that every single year, and it fails every single time. So,
yeah.
I had one guy, like, I think he sent it in like a week before the final, and I was like, you really didn't think I was going to catch this? Like, out of nowhere, here comes this person that's got, you know, 90% of their picks right. And they would make, like, they didn't make enough wrong to throw me off the scent. Like, they made, like, 3 wrong. And it's like, yeah, but you still had 97% of the picks right. Like,
yeah.
Like, nobody has that. So.
Like, you're not winning $1 million either. Like,
right, exactly. We're giving away some T-shirts, some cool stuff, great prizes, fun prize. Inspire Pro Wrestling, giving some Blu-rays, some great T-shirts, some great pins, posters, stickers, all that sort of stuff. But it's not $1 million, guys. Like, you just go. We give links to these stores. If you really want the shirt that we're giving away, just go and buy the fucking shirt. You know. Yeah.
So, can I give everybody a betting lesson real quick?
Let's do that. Yeah, please.
After they use their code VOW at mybookie.ag this week, and MyBookie matches their deposit, when you're betting baseball, and maybe you're not aware of this either, Rich. When you bet a baseball game, okay, you can bet what's called, if you just bet the game, I'll give you an example. Tonight, the Mets were minus 175 against the Phillies because DeGrom was on the hill, okay? So you could bet that game minus 175, and you have options, though, and I don't know if people know these options. You could just bet the action, and then you've got your money on the Mets. But you could also bet to where if DeGrom doesn't pitch for some reason or the opposing pitcher doesn't pitch for some reason, the bet is null and void and you get your money back. Okay? So there's an action bet where it's just you're betting on the game, doesn't matter. Or you can, you know, pick the little disclaimer, I only want this bet if the starting pitchers go. Well, I put a large amount of money on the New York Mets tonight and Jacob DeGrom. But I didn't play action because I only wanted the game if it was DeGrom. DeGrom was scratched at the last minute for Aaron Nola, and the Mets are losing 4-0 in the 4th inning. JL just saved himself a ton of money. You gotta dig into the details. Who's taking Aaron Nola minus 170 for? Nobody. Okay, so a little lesson if you're dropping that deposit on my bookie. Betting baseball, make sure you're getting that starting pitcher. Don't let him take your money. G1, Rich.
G1, let's do it. So, all right. One thing with the G1 this year, which is interesting. So, we'll obviously, we'll you know, instead of previewing that, we're going to talk about all this as it's happening in real time or whatnot. But we have the entire schedule out there. We have all the matches. We know everything that's going on. You know, some shows really stand out above others. But I think all in all, I'd say, you know, just my general thought of the schedule is a pretty balanced schedule this year. There's some times where you definitely feel like, you know, and your big time venues, your big time, you know, towns will tend to have, you know, a little bit more stacked shows. Like the opener September 19th, you got Okada versus Ibushi, Shingo versus Jay White, Ishii versus Suzuki. You know, there's some really good matches to kick things off. But I'd say, all in all, I consider this a pretty balanced schedule. I think they did a really good job of spreading out some top-tier matches. And I think one of the issues, too, is you don't have to draw nearly as much. I mean, the need to draw in a certain town isn't as prevalent here because, like, you're probably going to sell the amount of tickets that you're going to try to sell basically everywhere you go. So you don't really have to stack shows or stack matches and all that sort of stuff. And I don't know if I like that or dislike, because I always like the idea that, like, sometimes you would have, you know, this random show in this random area that would be awesome. It was like filled with really, really good matches. Whereas I feel like this is a very balanced schedule where like every single night there's at least 2 matches or so that are pretty good. But I don't know. Where do you stand on that? Did you prefer to have kind of these stacked mega shows, or do you like the idea that things are pretty spread out? Or do you agree? Or do you agree or disagree that things are pretty spread out, I should say?
I'm confused here. The Grom did pitch and he got bombed. But listen to this, Rich. I still had my ass saved because Nola was supposed to pitch for the Phillies, but it was Wheeler. And I put in the bet when it was Nola. So I it still saved my ass, but like from the other direction.
in a weird roundabout way. So
you see what I'm saying? I have no business getting this money back. But this is why you click the box that says both starting pitchers must go. This is why you do it, Rich. Situations like this, I should really be losing this money. Man, I'm feeling lucky tonight. Yeah, so what was your question again?
That's fine. You're focused on the money. I know. You got it. You put that big deposit down.
Because then I pulled up the box score and saw DeGrom, and I was like, wait a minute, what the fuck? But the screen is telling me that the bet's null and void. I'm like, well, then what happened? It was the Phillies pitcher that got scratched, not DeGrom. Anyway,
it's safe that you would think that DeGrom would never give up 4 runs because he's given up 2 runs all the last 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was like, wait a minute, Nola's on the Phillies. Why does this say that Nola pit? And then I'm like, oh, Nola was supposed to start with. Anyway, nobody cares. Point is, JL might still be getting that beverage refrigerator for his garage.
There we go. Fantastic. That's what we're all.
That's all that matters. Yeah. So in wasting everyone's time with my baseball betting, I forgot your question.
That's fine. That's fair. So I guess it's a 2-part question. So first off, do you agree with me that this G1, more so than maybe past G1s that we've seen, has a way more balanced schedule in terms of when the matches, big time matches, standout matches, draw matches, all that sort of stuff. To me, it feels way more spread out than prior years, where if you had, stack things at the beginning, stack things at the end, and in the middle you might get a bone tossed, once or twice a show at most. Whereas I feel like, and again, you can agree or disagree that, throughout this tournament, that pretty much every single night has a pretty good 1 to 2 really good standout matches, kind of a draw match, and they've kind of tried to balance things out a little bit, mostly because you don't need to. The draw isn't as important anymore. You're gonna sell 500 tickets wherever you go. There's no problem about that. So you don't need to stack these things to sell tickets nearly as much.
No, yeah. I don't think it's. I think it's more because the A block is so stacked that every night looks balanced. Because it's hard not to have a bunch of awesome matchups.
Sure.
In that particular block. I don't think they made any kind of concerted effort to balance everything out. I still think you see, despite the fact that they're selling limited tickets, I still think you see, the key matches and the key venues and things like that for the most part. Unless you've identified a pattern that I haven't. I just think that one block is so good that it may look like everything is more dispersed.
Well, let's actually, real quickly, without going over all of the matches on every single show, I did want to touch on kind of the top matches, the standout matches, I think, for each of the nights. So we start September 19th, as I mentioned, Okada and Ibushi, Shingo Jay White, Ishii versus Minoru Suzuki. So 3 really good matches to start off the A block. And more to your point, that it's hard to really have a bad match in the A block. Even Will Osprey versus Yujiro, your most anticipated match of the G1, comes up on that first night. As well. September 20th in Osaka again. Naito Tanahashi on the top there. Zack Sabre Jr. Evil, Hiroki Goto, Kenta are your 3 kind of standout matches, I would say, for the 20th. 23rd, Sapporo, Kotabushi, Jay White. So it's kind of a rematch of last year's tournament final. Tomohiro Ishii and Will Ospreay. And then that show kind of falls off a cliff after those 2. Minoru Suzuki, Taichi, Okada, Yujiro, Jeff Cobb, Shingo. But Jeff Cobb, Shingo should. That'd be an interesting one. If you can't have a good match against Shingo in 2020 or 2019, that's one to look out for Jeff Cobb. If he doesn't have a deliver there, and I don't think he's going to deliver the whole tournament. So,
who, Cobb?
Yeah.
It's like we said last week about Cobb, though. He's going to have so many matchups with great wrestlers. It's going to be hard. He can't have a bad tournament necessarily. I think some of those matches will land. I'm not super confident. I'd be less confident in him in the other block. There's a lot of matches. Oh God, he'd get eaten up. Yeah, he'd get eaten up in the B block for sure. There's a lot of matches that would just fall off. But it's a great block. It's hard. You get in there with Ishii and Ibushi and Will Ospreay. You really don't have to do anything, but be competent when you're in there with guys like that.
Sorry. So September 24th, Sapporo. This one looks like the potential for, I'd say, maybe the worst show on the entire thing. You got Naito and Zack Sabre Jr. on top. Yoshihashi versus Evil. Juice Robinson versus Kenta. I'm very scared about Kenta, Joe. After what I've seen on New Japan Strong, I'm very, very scared about Kenta this year.
No, those New Japan Strong main events fucking stink.
They're so bad. I'm so scared. Please.
Yeah, it's garbage. It's just straight up garbage.
Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Toru Yano, and then Hiroki Goto versus Sonata. So circle September 24th as a bit of a dud there. Maybe we'll be surprised. Maybe we'll be surprised, but not looking good on paper there for September 24th. So
the New Japan Strong undercards with all those tags.
Oh, they're
stuff.
Great.
And then you get these main events with.
Well, it's
with
all
Kenta.
business. It's guys getting in there. It's guys trying to prove that they're better. And then Kenta comes out and there's 7 ref bumps and a bunch of. And you're like, what the fuck, dude? Like, come on.
Yeah, it's junk.
We don't need that. We don't need it. September 27th, Okada versus Jay White on top. That's a huge match in Kobe. Will Osprey versus Shingo. Kotabushi versus Tomohiro Ishii. My God. September 27th. Yeah. Good Lord.
Yeah,
Kotabushi and Tomohiro Ishii is the third from the top.
Yeah, that's a great show. This is what I mean. But Kobe's a big-time stop. This is why I'm saying I don't notice a pattern of more. I feel like they still stack the
They just couldn't help. I mean,
stack.
there's just no way to have a bad show in the A block is I guess what you're kind of saying.
Yeah, and I still think they're stacking the cities that usually get stacked. So, and Taichi gets paired with Yujiro on that show, which, when Taiji, Yujiro, and Cobb are paired with each other, it frees up everybody else to wrestle each other. But then you get a show where Cobb, Taichi, and Yujiro, and Taichi's a little better than those guys, I think.
Sure, of course, yeah.
But when you get the shows where those guys all have a match against the big guys, then it's like those lineups don't look as good. But, when Cobb wrestles Yujiro and Taichi wrestles Yujiro and Taichi wrestles Cobb, those shows, it like works out because then the rest of these, top guys are all against each other. So that's kind of what happened in Kobe. Or Kobe, whatever you say.
Yeah, whatever. September 29th in Korakuen, Hiroki Goto, Naito on top. Toru Yano versus Evil. Tanahashi versus Juice Robinson. Zack Sabre Jr. versus Kenta. Yoshihashi versus Sonata for that show.
The problem with the B block is, like you're saying, you just have far less confidence that anything involving Kenta is going to be anything other than dog shit. And the problem with that is you have that same risk with Evil. You have Yano, who whatever he does is a waste of time. You have Yoshihashi, which he'll try hard, and I think he'll have some good matches. But the problem is when Kenta gets into that muck too. Now you've got at least 3 guys in that block that are just going to muck it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it drags everything down. And then if you're not a huge Sonata fan, you're really left with like Goto,
really
Naito,
struggling.
Tanahashi, Sabre, and Juice, and then the other half of the block is just kind of
Yeah,
varying degrees of either bullshit or just not that entertaining. So,
right, that's why the B block is tricky, because right off the bat, 3 guys are mucking it up. Look, Juice could use a big G1 at some point. I mean, he never seems to have a big G1, and he's not really set up for it in this block. Tanahashi has physical questions, but you can't write him off. And and then away you go. You kind of ran down the rest. If you're not, like you said, the other big key is if you're not a big Sonata guy, then you're really in trouble with this block, because then that's a 3rd or 4th or even 5th guy where it's like, eh. So I'm concerned about the B block. And the first B block show that you talked about on the 20th in Osaka is going to go a long way in telling us how these wrestlers are going to approach these matches, because you've got Naito and Tanahashi in the main event, which means all those other guys are on the undercard, and we're going to find out real quick what kind of matches we're going to get out of them. Because you got Yano, Kenta, and Evil all in singles matches that night, and we'll know what their style of work is going to be throughout the rest of the tournament very quickly.
September 30th, also in Korakuen, Ishii and Shingo, Will Osprey and Jay White, Okada versus Taichi, Kotabushi, Jeff Cobb, Minoru Suzuki, Yujiro. So less so of a real good Korakuen, but at least you got Ishii and Shingo on the top, and Osprey and Jay White, which should be pretty solid.
It's hard to come up with a bad card in that block.
It is, yeah. That might be the worst one, just because the potential for Cobb and Ibushi not to quite work out, Yujiro to kind of muck it up with Minoru, Taichi to muck it up, maybe Jay mucks it, but like that might be the worst one, honestly, is September 30th, and even that's pretty damn good. So the baseline of the A block is solid.
It's like I talked about last week. if Taichi just goes out there and wrestles, he can be very good against a lot of these guys. My concern is because they don't have a guy in that
They
block.
don't have a muck. Yeah, they don't have a muck guy in the A block, and they might need him to be that guy, which
exactly. And that
me.
means every one of his matches are going to be taken down.
Well, him and Yujiro as well. I'm worried about both of those guys.
See, Yujiro, I think, is just going to go out there and be the first of the 5 matches every night and have an 8-minute match. And you're not going to like it, but it's just going to exist. And you're just going to like, all right, it's the 8-minute opener, and it is what it is. You hope it's like 3 1/4. It'll probably be 2.5. I'm not really worried so much about him. I'm worried about them booking Taichi in a way in that he becomes the night off, and it's bells and whistles, and he's choking people with
and it goes for 15 minutes, more importantly.
Yeah, that's my concern. You know, where it's like if Yano was in the block with Taichi, you worry about it less because Yano's the night off. So I'm a little concerned about how the Taichi matches come off, only because he's the only guy in that block who has the potential to be that, and they may want that in one of the matches every night in that block.
So we move on here. B block October 1st, Naito and Sonata on top. That's an interesting one for sure. Kenta versus Evil. God, kill me now for that one. And then Hiroshi Tanahashi and Yoshihashi, Goto, Zack Sabre Jr., Juice Robinson, Toru Yano on that night. So that's that. October 5th, another fun as fuck show here. Kotabushi versus Will Osprey. Ishii versus Taichi, Okada versus Suzuki, and those guys always have pretty good... Well, hit or miss. Either they're great or they're terrible. There's no in-between Okada, Minoru, Suzuki. I'll see what happens there. But yeah, that October 5th show, with Kotabushi and Will Ospreay at the top, has got to get you excited, given what we've seen from especially from Ospreay in RevPro, which we'll talk about a little bit later. October 6th, you got Tanahashi and Kenta, Yoshihashi, Naito, Juice Robinson versus Evil as kind of your top tier matches there. October 7th, Ibushi, Shingo, Taichi J. White, Will Ospreay, Minoru Suzuki. That's a good contender maybe for one of the other worst ones, but Ibushi and Shingo at top sounds pretty damn good. Either way. October 8th, another B block, Tanahashi versus Evil, Juice versus Naito, Sonata versus Kenta. Then we'll just kind of run through these other ones real quick because nothing. I wouldn't say there's any super standout shows here until we get to the final few days. October 10th, Okada versus Shingo, Kotabushi versus Minoru Suzuki, Will Ospreay versus Taichi on that night. October 11th, Naito versus Evil, Tanahashi versus Goto, Juice Robinson versus Sonata. So real quick here, October 13th, Okada versus Ishii. It sounds pretty good on top. October 14th, you got Hiroshi Tanahashi and Sonata on top. Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. That October 13th, that might be the worst A-block show. Because Osprey is with Cobb, Ibushi's with Yujiro, and Shingo's with Taichi. So you're really taking out 3 of the, arguably the 3 best guys in that block. With the 3
right.
You get Okada, Ishii, and Suzuki, Jay White. Now, Jay White could be the guy that mucks it up, too. We can't discount that.
Definitely been known to do that. Yeah, definitely been known to do that. So,
but I'm looking at that one, October 13th. That could be the worst A-block show. And look, it's not in a town that they normally feature.
Yeah, Hamatsu or whatever. So
I really think they booked it the way they always book it. I don't think they worried about COVID or half crowds or anything.
October 14th in Yokohama, things start to get a little bit more businessy here. Tanahashi versus Sonata, Goto versus Evil, Juice Robinson, Zack Sabre Jr., Yano, Naito, that sort of stuff there. And then we go to Sumo Hall for the final 2 nights. These are the big ones here. October 16th, A block, Shingo versus Suzuki, Ishii versus Jay White, Okada versus Osprey, Cobb versus Yujiro, and Kotabushi versus Taichi.
I gotta tell you a little story.
Yeah, go ahead.
So last week, we put 1,000 to 1 on Cobb to win the block?
We did, yes, yeah.
A listener DM'd me.
Uh-oh.
And wanted to put a little action on Cobb to win the block at 1,000 to 1. He wanted to put $20 on it. I wanted to know if I'd cover the $20K. And I talked the listener out of it. I could not steal their $20 because it would have been a free 20 spot for JL, right? I mean, there's no chance Cobb's winning the block. I said, look, man, just look at the Sumo Hall lineup. Cobb is wrestling Yujiro. That's got first match out of the gate written all over it, and both of them have 4 points. Why are you tearing up a $20 bill and putting it through a shredder? You're wasting your money. You've got dreams of $20K that you have no chance of winning. There's no chance that Jeff Cobb. All you got to do is look at that matchup. You know what I mean? So it's like, I can't take your action. It's not because I'm scared I'm going to lose. I just don't want to take free money from you. There's no chance Jeff Cobb can win the block because he wouldn't be matched with Yujiro on the final night. So that's your tip-off right there. But obviously, the other match, and the guy came to a sense. He's like, you know what? You're right. I'm not going to give you a free $20.
He put pen to paper on the contract, though, Joe. I don't know.
You know, I talked him out of it. I was like,
I'm thinking about it now.
You know, I can't take your. Maybe Rich will take your $20, but
I can't pay that out. So yeah, no.
I think this is what happens.
Bought
with
that new car.
Sometimes.
I can't pay that out. So
what happens with gambling sometimes is you do the math in your head of what you could win, and then you start dreaming about that.
No, not me.
Payoff.
Not me. I'm the worst gambler ever. I just think about how much I'm going to lose. I never think of the winnings. I always think of the losing, so I just never gamble. So
yeah, I'm like, dude, look at that final day. You don't have a chance. I mean, I really don't want to take, even though it's only $20. In good conscience, I can't take that action. But you know, you look at the Okada Will Osprey, and immediately when I saw the lineups, that's what jumped out at me because they're wrestling on the final day, which tells you that there's a very good chance that Will Osprey will be in the mix to advance on the final day because it'd be very strange for them to put Okada in a match against a guy who's out. Okay? So that tells me that Will Osprey, who had a losing record last year, is probably going to take a bit of a step up in this year's tournament in a very stacked block and be in the mix, which is, if that's the case, was definitely an eyebrow raiser for me. Will Osprey has never beaten Okada, and that's a story that they're definitely telling. That's deliberate. I think he's 0-4 if you count the RevPro match. The RevPro match that really got Will Osprey invited into Chaos and kicked off his New Japan career and all that because Okada was impressed with him. And that match has been part of New Japan canon. So I think it's 0-4 if you count that match. Maybe 0-5, maybe 0-3. I might be a match off. I think it's 0-4. And they're deliberately holding off that, you know, as one of Will Ospreay's big scalps. The big scalp he's going to get. He already beat Tanahashi. So he's eventually going to beat Okada in a singles match. I don't think it's going to be in this tournament. I think it's too soon. I'm still picking Okada to win the block, and I'm still picking Okada to win the whole tournament. But it's going to be another one of these matches, I think, where Osprey takes Okada to the limit, comes up short, and it's part of his progressive story. Again, nobody remembers that Will Osprey went 4-5 or 3-6 in the G1 last year. All they remember is that he beat Tanahashi. It doesn't really matter what your record is. It's who you beat and when you beat them. And it's who you wrestle and where you wrestle them. And that's what I think this is. This is a showcase match. It's Sumo Hall. It's the final night. Okada will probably need it to advance. And they're probably going to main event. And they're going to be told to go out there and have the best match possible. And the story is going to be Will Osprey, Okada surviving by a thread against this guy as we continue to tell this story of Will Osprey eventually beating him and overcoming him. And when he does that, then he becomes a made guy and a main eventer in the company. So this is, to me, when I saw the schedule come out, this is my yellow highlighter. This is my match of the tournament. This is my number one. Because to me, this is the biggest and most important storytelling match of the tournament. This one. And that's the one that I have highlighted, circled, whatever you want to call it. Really jumped out at me more than any other match in any of the lineups.
So I do want to say here, and before we get to the B block, I'll touch on these with two articles I wanted to plug at Voices of Wrestling. One, John Carroll did G1 Climax previews for both the A block and the B block. Just incredible work by John on those. I think
they're 497,000 words.
The rough estimate, I think, is not that far off from there. Those articles are lengthy. They're long. You will not find a better preview for the G1 Climax.
Nothing more in depth on planet Earth.
None of you other geeks have come anywhere close.
So what's your other article?
So the other article is one that it's called Gato's 2020 G1 Climax booking. So what? I don't care. 30 years this tournament was the name of it. But what's interesting about that column is J. Michael, who did G1 Climax numbers for our ebook last year, started looking at the schedule this year and came up with a weird just sort of like a Gato's kind of fit everything that Gato's done for years prior. And this doesn't just apply to the G1; it applies to a lot of the Gato booking. Has seemingly kind of followed a template, followed some sort of like, okay, well, this and then this and that, like it all kind of makes sense, and it all's kind of 2020. He's decided, fuck it, I'm throwing everything out, And the G1's no exception. So it's a long article. It goes on a little bit of a winding road to get to where it's going to get to. I will just jump to this part. But if you're confused, the article I think does a really good job of kind of setting the stage and then getting you to where it is. But here's the part that I wanted to bring up before we talk about the B block and just see what your thoughts are and if that affects your picks or affects how you react to these final 2 days. Because like we said, usually when these schedules come out, we look at the final 2 days and go, okay, boom, boom, boom. Those guys are going to win the tournament, or those guys are going to be in the mix. These guys are not going to be in the mix. It's over. It's easy to find. This year, I don't know that it is as easy, and J. Michael does bring up a good point here. So he says, to reiterate, since the G1 Climax adopted the current 19-day schedule in 2015, these 5 things have been true every single time. The number 1 and number 2 in semi-main events have come from different blocks and not tied with anybody. These are where their placements are on the shows.
Wait. I don't understand that. Run that past
The number
me
1 and number 2 in semi-main events, like counting the amount of semi-main events,
Oh, okay.
They've
gotcha.
come from different blocks, and they have not been tied with anybody. So there's been a clear, this is who I want to be number 1, this is who I want to be number 2 in semi-main events, in terms of the booking.
Wait, I'm still confused. So the person with the most main events and semi-main
events. No, both semi-main events. We're talking people that ranked first and second in semi-main events.
Oh.
Have always come from different blocks. If I read all these, it'll make more sense. There's building blocks on these.
All right, I'm curious because that first one doesn't really move my needle.
Okay,
go ahead.
And that's fine. But yeah, like I said, that one is going to play up to what's going to come later.
Okay, I got you.
So, okay, the number 2 point here, the things that have always been true since 2000, or has been true for the last 5 years. The number 1 and number 2 person in main events have always come from different blocks.
Okay.
The number 1 has always been clear, and sometimes there's been ties for number 2 in those different blocks as well. But all you have to know is there's always been this guy's the top guy in main events of A block, this guy's the number 1 guy in main events of B block, and the number 1 has always been clear amongst those, okay?
Okay.
There's been a clear, this guy main events more shows than anybody else.
Right.
In both blocks, so, okay? The number 1 and number 2 in semi-main events have always been in the main event of their block finals since 2015.
Okay.
So remember that first point that I said there?
Yes.
The number 1 and number 2 in semi-mains have always been in the main event of their block finals.
Right. So that wasn't very interesting to begin with.
Yes, but it was going to work in a second.
But the two, number 1 and number 2 in total semi-main events are always in the block. And it's important that they're in opposite blocks because they're always in the final. Yeah. They're always in the main event of the final night. Okay, now, gotcha. Okay,
yeah, so that's where it goes there. So now it gets even more wild here. So again, this is from 2015 to the present. Every single block final main event, 10 out of 10, this is going back even 10 years now, has been, or this is going back, the 5 years, as I said, 10 out of 10 block final main events has been the number 1 in main events for the block versus the number 1 for semi-main events as well.
Okay, so the top 2 people in every block end up main eventing against each other on the final night.
Right.
Every time.
9 out of the 10 G1 Climax finalists had been in the main event of the final night of their block.
Okay,
that seems pretty obvious. So now we look at the schedule. We don't know nights 17 and 18. Presumably those are not, because they don't want to tip off who's in the main event or whatever.
16 and 17, yeah.
Yeah. Or that's right, yeah. So the most main events in the A block now, without those 2 nights where we don't know, it's tied. Okada and Ibushi are your 2 guys with the most main events in the A block.
Okay.
Your most semi-main events in the A block are Jay White. So your most main events in the B block and the most main events overall. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, we'll start with the A.
So that means this trend has to be broken.
The trend is broken because by tradition, then the main event of the A block would be White versus either Okada or Ibushi.
Yeah. But he's faced Ishii. Okay,
exactly. So that's broken now. That what has been true the last 5 years is broken. That's done. It's
broken in the A block.
Yeah.
Yep. So you can't use that as a predictor, even though for 5 years straight it held firm.
Exactly.
Okay, so now B block.
So B block, the most main events.
I'm into this now. You got
it's
me
good,
into
yes.
this.
Yeah, you had to build it. You had to be patient, Joe.
I'm into this.
As I said,
Let's
the
go.
article even does even more winding roads, and there's a part 2 coming up as well. So definitely read this if you get a chance. Again, it's called Gato's 2020 G1 Climax booking. So what? I don't care. 30 years of this tournament. So
yeah,
we'll play on the great T-shirts. But anyway, so the most main events in the B block and overall is Tetsuya Naito at 5. So he leads everybody in main events. The most semi-main events in the B block and the most semi-main events overall is Evil, also with 5.
but they're not facing each other.
They're not facing each other. The last match of the B block should then be Naito versus Evil, but they face each other in night 14. So who the fuck knows? It's wide open now, you know?
Yeah. So you can't follow that pattern, which has held firm for 5 straight years. Well, I mean, when I look at B block, it's obvious to me the 2 matches that are going to matter. Sonata versus Evil and Naito versus Kenta. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
And I think this is why Sonata is the betting favorite to win the tournament on the European books. And, man, you know, my bookies got to start adding wrestling because we would make them a ton of money.
Oh, my God, yeah. If they're listening, their reps are listening, we'll timestamp this as well. Maybe we'll put a little note in our email. You guys got to start taking action on wrestling because we'd have a full show on that, to be honest. We have some degenerate gamblers in our Slack that I think could host an entire show on wrestling betting for sure. So
you could see why Sonata is the betting favorite to win the tournament because, you know, it's like Naito's the champion. So he's not going to win the tournament in all likelihood. And you really don't want him in a final either. So that just screams Kenta spoiling him, particularly since they had a title match earlier this year.
Right, and it seems like an easy rematch to have in October or whatever. King of Pro, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that to me seems so obvious that Kenta spoils Naito.
So then it comes down to Sonata and Evil, and you feel like Evil, you know, was just on top. So it's like, you know, I could see where they're coming from with Sonata. Those other 3 matches obviously aren't going to mean anything. You know, it's Tanahashi and Zack Sabre Jr. You could easily see them being eliminated by that point, and they're already feuding with each other. So it's an easy match to do on that night and all that. The other 2 matches are clearly going to be.
I don't think Yoshihashi is going to be spoiled by Toru Yano, but, you know, maybe.
No, they're clearly meaningless. Now, the A block, Okada obviously is going to be in the mix. The question is whether Will be in the mix as well. I don't see why you would do that match with Will strictly playing a spoiler, though.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. The way I see the A block and just kind of reading, you know, that card, I think Ishii and Jay White is obviously, you know, one of the big matches there with Jay White being in the mix, of course. Ishii not going to be in the mix, but unfortunately, but can play spoiler. Okada and Osprey, I read that like you as well, where both guys are in play one way or another. Okada obviously winning over Will, but Will getting in the mix there. I am interested as well, very interested in Kotabushi and Taichi. If Taichi plays spoiler to Kotabushi as well, because it would play in, again, they're still kind of semi-feuding after the tag title thing, so I guess it doesn't make... But I don't think you can eliminate Kotabushi before that night. I feel like he has to still be in the mix as potentially repeating as champion, right?
No, Taichi's knocking him out.
Yeah, right.
And then Shingo, Minoru Suzuki both guys will be out.
Yeah, for sure.
And Cobb and Yujiro, obviously, both guys will be out. So then it'll come down to, you know, Ibushi will get knocked out, and I don't know what the order of the matches will be, but, you know, I think Ishii will be playing spoiler, and then, you know, Okada and Will Ospreay. I think if that match goes on last, Okada's advancing. You know, and it's like, I think the only chance Will would have to pull the upset is if it doesn't go on last. But it's going on last. There's no other main event there. I mean, if it was Ibushi, Jay White, that's a main event.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? There's no other main event. So I really think Okada is beating Will Ospreay to advance. Probably it's a situation where if he loses, Jay White advances or something. You know what I mean? But he'll win. And then, man, you know, if they give people Okada Sonata, people are going to flip out. Because they just did that match like 4 times. And a lot of people didn't like a lot of them. So I don't know. I'm not as I'm not as dead set on Sonata like everybody else is. I think they're going to do Okada and Evil because I really think it makes the most sense because then Okada can get his win back against Evil because Evil beat him in New Japan Cup. So to me, that's the final that makes the most sense. And then he could thwart the interference and Goto and Dick Togo and all that bullshit and get his win back. And then, you set up Okada Naito again. Whether you're getting a half full dome or a full dome, whatever the case. So that's how I read all of this.
Yeah, I like that move. I can't get out of my head, Jay White. I don't know where Jay White is slotted right now. I guess that's the biggest thing is like, I don't know where they see him. I don't know what they see out of him. I don't know if he's the leader of the Bullet Club, if Evil's the leader of the Bullet Club, if that becomes the story as that Jay White comes back and is like, wait a minute, like, what the fuck? Like, I'm here. What the hell? What's this asshole doing here? And maybe you set up a Jay White versus Evil final. That's, I don't think, out of the realm of possibility.
No, that's what I was just going to say. You could do Jay White Evil and then start telling that story.
Right. Yeah, that's the problem, though, is it's so hard to predict because we don't know what they think of Jay White right now. We don't know where Jay White's slotted. Is he the second in command? Is he the top? I don't know what the fuck he's doing.
I don't see either one of them as dome main eventers. Is that too harsh?
No, I agree. I'm with you.
I mean, so that's my problem with that final. I mean, sometimes you overthink these things. Who wins these things? Guys that are...
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're building up a half of the Tokyo Dome main event, so...
Unless it's going to be the year where someone loses a case or something. There's always that factor. I get it. But, I err on the side of the safe pick. I think Okada's the safe and obvious pick. There's that year where Tanahashi was the obvious pick, and everybody worked themselves into a shoot to pick someone else. It was Tanahashi all along. And he won it, and everyone was like, well, that fucking makes sense.
Right.
You know what I mean?
God damn it, that made a lot of sense.
Why'd we pick fucking, whoever the fuck? Everybody would pick Shibata every year, and it was like, no, man, it's going to be Naito or Okada, or it's never going to be Shibata. Stop. So it's like, I just, you do a Jay White Evil final, yeah, it's a nice story match. You see what's going to happen with those two. I want one of those guys headline the Dome, and I don't think they're going to do. So I don't know. I just think it's going to be Okada over Evil. I mean, I'm just going, the match the simplest matchup that makes the most sense with the way that they book. They love these guys getting their wins back, avenging a loss, and Okada, that's a Dome main eventer in a match that I don't think has drawn all the money that it can. I think Okada and Naito has more money in it.
Yeah, for sure. I could potentially, as you said, kind of put the Evil story in the back burner. That if this summer of Evil is over and we're now moved on to, this thing or whatever it's going to be. So I don't want to reveal who, I'll reveal it on next week's show, who the G1 Pick'em, the favorites for the G1 winner and the block winners and all that. Because I don't want to influence the voting. I don't want people then to kind of, pick based off, who's not being picked or whatever. But
the old daily fantasy where you want to pick who no one else is picking.
Exactly. I don't want to do that because I don't want people getting cute or whatever in their picks. But I will say there's two overwhelming people that are picked as the G1 Climax winner, and they're people that we have mentioned many, many times throughout this as well. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, that's only like we get a ton of responses over the last 2 days. So I'll be interested to see how that that
Rich,
changes.
I haven't seen it, but I assume that everyone's picking Jay White and Sonata to win the blocks. I mean, you don't have to say. I know you don't want to say, but I would say my prediction would be...
not necessarily. No.
So one of those was wrong? At least one of those is wrong.
They're both... They're heavy... I don't say they're heavy favorites, because the A block, Okada is the favorite right now.
Okay.
To win, but Jay White is very closely behind him. Whereas B block is overwhelmingly in Sonata's favor. So
you did give them away after all.
Sort of, but not the winner. I didn't give the G1 winner. That one's real. That one's tight. That one's tight. That's like, dude, there is the next vote that comes in will swing that one way or another. So that one is 0.4% difference between the two G1 winners there. So that's nice to see a lot of debate as to who can actually win this thing. So
yeah. All right, interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
Getting a lot of draws too. There's a lot of people that love draws.
Why?
I see these every year, and I'm like,
you know why they're doing draws? Because here's what they're doing. they're picking all the matches, and like we said earlier, it's not coming out the way they want it.
Right.
So they're using draws to like knock points off of people to get the right people advancing is what they're doing. There's one match where a lot of people are picking a draw. I can't remember. Is it not in the spreadsheet because I haven't seen the spreadsheet, but just like online and on Twitter and stuff, I see a lot of people picking a draw for one particular match. I can't remember.
So the one that right now I hate spoil it. Anyway, don't pick based off what I'm saying here. Pick by your own intuition or whatever. But anything involving LIJ versus LIJ or Bullet Club versus Bullet Club, people have heavy draws on.
Okay.
So like the idea that like I guess they I don't know. One person chose a draw for Juice Robinson versus Evil, and I kind of want to tell them like. They're probably just going to pick a winner there, guys. Like,
yeah, that's just, I'm telling you, though, that's just like, that was someone, they're like, oh, fuck, I have Evil winning the block, but I want so-and-so to win the block, so I'm just going to throw a draw somewhere. It's probably what you're not getting an Evil Juice Robinson draw in the middle of some card in fucking Hamamatsu or whatever. Yeah. You're not getting that. I mean, it's absurd.
Juice is gonna have a pin. 1, 2, ding, ding, ding. No, time limit. Oh,
yeah.
God.
I mean, you can get the draw in Sumo Hall
if it's fucking Tanahashi and Okada. Yeah, having a 35-minute main event or whatever. 20 to 30-minute main event. But yeah, I don't know if
you're not getting a draw in Hiroshima on October 7th. Right. It's not. You're not getting that. Okayama is not being treated to a Toru Yano Zack Sabre Jr. 30-minute draw. It's at least we hope not.
I got it. God help us if they do, but
so that's what's up with that.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing every year is to go through and see who's picking draws. But you're right. It's absolutely people at the end of the day going like, I don't really want Taichi to have 12 points. Be better if he didn't have 12 points. So let me find a way to maneuver his points a little bit. So
when does this fucking shit start?
September 19th, Saturday morning, Joe.
Saturday. I don't know why I'm so nasty about it, but okay.
Am I still covering you on the 20th or what?
I don't know what I'm doing yet.
Okay. Yeah, let me know.
I got look, this has been a piece of cake so far. I mean,
all you had to watch is a bunch of bad All Japan matches. So.
3 Champion Carnival shows in the books. It's half over. I got another day or two off until we get to the start of the N1 on Friday. Then Saturday the G1 starts, and then that Sunday is a tricky day.
Yeah. The best thing about the G1 though, overall, I don't know, you probably seen it as well, is that like they're not filling the shows with a bunch of shitty tag matches that don't matter.
Nope.
It's fucking business. Go click that file. Boom, 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 boom. Business. Let's go. I love it.
One Young Lion match, and
which is fine with me. I'll watch
and
Young
then
Lion matches all
5
day.
tournament matches, and then that's that. So, I might be hitting you up on Saturday to maybe take the G1 show, but of course, Patreon.com/Voice of Wrestling. All 3 tournaments being covered, daily audio. And we got the first 3 nights at Champion Carnival up already with best analysis you're going to get anywhere. So, and then it's a good transition because I guess we're going to talk about the Champion Carnival.
Yeah, let's do it
next. But yeah, the N1 victory coverage starts this Friday. Now, just to let people know, Noah's schedule is very sketchy, and it's not even known when or where all of these shows are airing yet. I am at the mercy of the airing schedule, okay? I'm going to get Wrestle Universe and make sure that anything that airs on Universe, I'm going to watch in a timely fashion and review. But these shows that are airing like on TV...
Yeah, you're not getting a satellite dish and fucking throwing your rabbit ears so you can grab, Japanese feeds from the Lanza state. So yeah, no, that's not happening. So.
I'm at the mercy of uploads. Now I'll be on top of it as soon as they hit, but so if there's a random N1 show on a certain date and it hasn't dropped, I can't do anything about that. So that is out of my hands. But, I'm going to watch them as soon as I'm physically able to watch them. What's good is one of the N1 shows that's airing on TV also happens to be the show that's on Fight. So I could just order that one and watch it. You know what I mean? So you don't have to worry about waiting for the upload on that one. And then a bunch of them are airing on Universe. But there's going to be 1 or 2 shows that air on TV where it's like I'm at the mercy of whoever uploads them. I can't do anything about that. But otherwise, Champion Carnival and G1, obviously, there'll be no issues with that with the streaming services. And, we're covering every show every day. So just look at the schedules for all 3 tournaments, and that's when we'll have reviews up. most of the time it'll be me. I'm sure Rich will step in for a couple here or there. He usually does. And for the G1 anyway, I'm not going to subject him to parachuting in on this Carnival tournament after not watching.
Yeah, I watched a match or two, and I think I'm done. So I'll let you handle the Champion Carnival there, Joe.
$5 tier, though. That's a lot of content, $5 tier. And
absolutely, yeah. There's a ton of stuff going on there.
In between, you got Rich doing his G1 historical stuff, too. So September and October is just a ton of content. And I'm thinking, well, I don't want to say it on the air, but how about a little NFL intelligentsia, Rich?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
You never, I might be able to look. I can't promise it every week, but there will be some NFL intelligentsia at some point. Maybe for week 1 this week.
Yeah, we got a deep dive on the. I've already watched and I'm ready to go as well. So that's even waiting in the wings.
Oh yeah, the deep dive. Yeah, I don't know when I'm going to be able to fucking.
Unfortunately, I was going to tell you we should probably have done that deep dive before all this came, but that's all right.
Probably. And
you guys are getting enough content. We'll use that for a rainy day. So.
It's also like 20 plus matches.
It's a lot of matches, yeah.
It might even be a 2-parter, that deep dive. But if you're not a subscriber, this is the time to do it. A ton of people jump in during G1 season and then jump out. We obviously have no problem with that if you just want the G1 content. So just a little plug-a-roo for that. Rich, Champion Carnival. Wow, we're keeping good time here. I think we're going to get to everything.
We're doing it. Yeah, we're doing a good job here.
Doing a nice job.
Not to pat ourselves on the back, but yeah.
Champion Carnival catch-up. So this is good because the next Carnival show, excuse me, isn't until Sunday. So by the time most people listen to this will still be relevant information. Quick update on the standings. Stay in the park. Stay in the park. There you go. Can of corn. I was worried for nothing. Tricky with the sound off because you can't hear the announcers.
Oh, you have no idea. Yeah, you have no idea announcers. You can hear the crack of the bat. You can only follow the outfielder, and sometimes they don't do a great job. So,
right. So, A block, very simple. Zeus and Jake Lee are on top with 4 points each, and everybody else is eliminated, barring double DQs and double countouts, which of course are 0 points. Big Tom Fishy, Tom Fishbeck, and myself both worked our way through all of these scenarios and compared our notes and came up with the same scenarios. So we think that we're accurate. So it'll be Zeus and Jake Lee on top with 4 points, and obviously their match is probably going to decide who wins the block. Suwama and Jiro are both 1 and 2 with 2 points, and they're both out. And Kuma Arashi is 0 and 2 and is probably going 0 and 4. And he's in last place, and he's eliminated as well. So the A block is pretty simple. Zeus and Jake Lee are going to hook it up on the final block day, and it's probably going to decide who advances. The B block's a little trickier. Suji Ishikawa is 2-0 at 4 points.
Booker man.
Booker man. And I got something to get into with that in a second. It's even sleazier.
It's so funny because I'm looking at an old, I was doing for the G1 Climax series, the retro G1 Climax series. I'm looking at Ricky Choshu when he was trying to build up, the Three Musketeers or whatever. He entered the G1 and just lost every time. It's like, no, I want Hashimoto to beat me. I want Muto to beat me. I want Shono to beat me. He's got the book and he goes, no, the next stars, those are the next wave. Suji, Mr. Pencilman over there. No, I'm gonna go 2-0. That's fine. Thanks, guys.
Rich, it gets better because one of his wins was a forfeit over Yoshitatsu, but the Yoshitatsu injury might be a work. So in other words, he may have given himself a forfeit win just to give himself a night off. You see what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah.
Because Yoshitatsu wrestled the next night with like the old taped up back. Right? And it's like highly questionable whether he was really unable to go the night before. It might just be a storytelling device. So he may have not only booked himself to start 2-0, he may have booked himself into a forfeit win on purpose.
A night off because he didn't want to go. He didn't want to go 15 minutes in the ring, so he got himself a forfeit.
He did wrestle a tag that night, to be fair, because they missed a bunch of. But I mean, it's hardly like working a single. But anyway. Yuma Aoyagi also has 4 points, but he's 2-1. So since he only has one more match to go, he's in second place with his 4 points. Kento Miyahara is in third place with 2 points at 1-1. Yoshitatsu and Shotaro Ashino are eliminated. Yoshitatsu's 1 and 2 with 2 points, and Shotaro Ashino was 0 and 2 with no points. And again, they are eliminated with asterisk of no double DQs or double countouts, which are rare. They do them on occasion. But the only way that any of these people who we're calling eliminated can get back in the mix is if there's a bunch of wacky double DQs, and they're not going to do that. So for all intent and purpose, Yoshitatsu and Ashino are out. Now, this is where it gets interesting because on the very next show, we've got a Kento Miyahara versus Yuma Aoyagi match, what they've been building to this whole tournament long, because Aoyagi is teasing doing another turn. Remember, Rich, he turned on Miyahara earlier in the year and went heel, and they had their match. But now, like, Miyahara saved him from an attack by Enfants, and they've been eyeing each other up. So we've been building to this match that's coming up on Sunday, and it's an eliminator, a straight-up eliminator. You win or you go home, and it's the same scenario for both guys. So that's going to be a super interesting match with those two guys. And on the same night, we've got Tsuji Ishikawa against Ashino, who's already out. Now, Ishikawa could advance if Miyahara and Aoyagi draw, okay, and Ishikawa wins, it's over. So we've reached a point in the tournament where someone can advance on the next show in the B block. The A block, Jake Lee is facing Arashi, Zeus is facing Suwama, and no one can. Nobody can lock it up. Okay, because then they could still tie. Like if one of those guys win and the other loses, the other guy can still beat them in the final night, and they can finish tied and then have a tiebreak match. Because remember, All Japan doesn't have tiebreakers. New Japan with the G1, if you finish tied, the head-to-head is the tiebreaker. They don't do that in All Japan for the Carnival. If you finish tied, you're having another match. So A block won't be decided till the final night, no matter what. B block could be decided if there's a draw, but more than likely, Ashino is going to upset Ishikawa. Miyahara will probably beat Aoyagi, and I've been predicting Miyahara to win the tournament to win the block and win the tournament all along. And once he lost to Yoshitatsu on the first night, I thought it was a lock he was winning the block.
He just wins out now,
Yeah, so I think he'll beat Aoyagi. Ishikawa will get upset by Ashino, which doesn't hurt anything because Ashino's eliminated anyway. And then it comes down to Miyahara versus Ishikawa on the final night. And if Ishikawa puts himself over in that match,
I'd love it.
Because there's no point to that.
No.
Like, even if it's Aoyagi you can't, like, why would you do that? Like, if Miyahara and Ishikawa are facing each other on the final night, it's going to be for the block. You know, they're keeping it simple because the Jake Lee and Zeus are going to face each other on the final night for the other block. Again, Rich, sometimes we overthink these things. Do you know what I mean?
I think we want them to have more intricacies than they do, and they usually don't. Like that's a constant thing in the old G1s. People would say, "Hey, I have like an 8-way tie for the 8." I'm like, just don't. That's not going to happen. So just come up with something different. Hey, how do I split a 5-way tie? Or how do you guys score a 5-way block tie? And I'm like, they're not going to do that. It's like,
pick a winner.
Just pick a winner. Like maybe a tiebreaker if you really want to. Maybe 2 guys will tie, but probably not. It's probably going to be a guy in the A block that wins and a guy in the B block that wins. I think we so badly want there to be all these, but many times these Japan tournaments, it's like, nope, that guy won and that guy won. That's it. Like it's not. We overcomplicate it, definitely.
So I think we're getting Jake Lee and Miyahara in the final.
How original.
Jake Lee was the trendy pick to win the tournament. He still might. I think they're going to go with Miyahara. But it wouldn't stun me if they went with Jake Lee. I think they should go with Miyahara. But we'll see. I think Jake Lee's had enough chances. I don't buy him as a top guy, and I'm done with him. But I think that's going to be your final. I think that's fairly obvious at this point. What's more interesting is how that Miyahara-Aoyagi match goes down and how that story kind of formulates. With Miyahara saving him a couple nights ago, and then Aoyagi watching from the shadows as Miyahara was having his match the next night, which I thought was interesting. And there's a lot of uneasiness between the two because of the history. So there's a lot of cool booking story-wise going through the tournament, but the matches just haven't delivered at all. And that's been the problem. And even when they got the Korakuen Hall for night 3, we thought, okay, everyone's going to pick up the pace for Korakuen Hall. It wasn't the case. It was another mediocre night. And it's not that the matches are bad or that the work is bad. They're just not. This is the Carnival. This is the showcase event of the year. You're supposed to be having your best matches, and it hasn't been the case. That what has concerned me is the lack of effort.
Yeah, the efforts
in the tournament.
and I can't speak for the entire tournament, but I watched the final 2 matches of that Korakuen. I watched the Miyahara and Ashino, which was my most anticipated match of the entire tournament, and then Jake Lee versus Suwama, 2 what I considered on paper, these are big time matches. This is arguably the biggest match in the B block, I think, without question, and I thought the biggest match on the A block, and they're matches, they're 18-minute matches. There's some leg selling, there's some moves. One guy wins, another guy loses, but it's like you said, it was like, all right, when does it kick into gear? And it's like, oh, all right, that didn't kick into gear, but okay, the main event time, Jake Lee all right, no, that's it's just kind of like they were running at a 6 the entire time, and you're like, let's go, Korakuen Hall, Champion Carnival, like, fucking get into it, let's go, let's get some action going here, but no.
They won't go. They haven't gone.
they're just matches. They're definitely wrestling matches. I will tell you that. Definitively, they are wrestling matches, but I can't say much more beyond that.
I can't really call any of them bad necessarily.
No,
they just exist.
The way that I described Miyahara and Ashino was it wasn't as bad as it was not good. Like, it was a perfectly fine wrestling match, but it just wasn't good at all. And it's like, was it bad? Was there bad work? No, it was very well worked, but it's like, dude, come on, let's go. Like, let's pick up the pace here.
That's like the second best match of the tournament.
That's what I heard. When I heard that, I was like, oh, I'm not watching the rest of this. Because people said, all right, well, watch that match, and if you don't like that, then you'll hate everything else. And I was like, oh, well, if that's good, then...
Yeah, I'm looking for my notes, and I can't find them. Okay, here we go. So, here's the thing about this tournament. There's been, 11 matches so far. 4, and then 3 because of the forfeit. At least 7 or 8 of the matches have been the same exact structure. Somebody works over a body part, the other guy makes a comeback, and then a very abrupt finish off of that comeback, with either the guy making the comeback, completing the comeback, or the other guy just getting a flash win, like out of nowhere. That's been the match structure of like 7 or 8 of these 11 matches. Yeah. It's been repetitive. The matches have been short. The finishes have been abrupt. And it's like, it's not just the match length, Rich. If these were a bunch of 8-minute matches that were fucking hot sprints with guys killing each other, we wouldn't be complaining about the match length. We'd be praising it. We'd be saying, this is great. They're getting in, they're getting out. They're having these, great fucking, Tomohiro Ishii style fucking sprints. And that's what you expect from this roster. And they're not doing that. They're doing these slow developing matches where they're working a body part and the other guy makes a comeback and then somebody hits their finish out of nowhere and the match is over. And then, the main event goes a little bit longer and, barely cracks 3 stars. And it's like very frustrating to see that kind of lack of effort from these guys. This is all Japan where guys are known to, you expect guys to break some skin and beat the shit out of each other and show some fight and some intensity. There's been no intensity in this tournament at all. The first match that had any intensity was Suwama and Jake Lee, which was the main event of night 3. And it took them forever to get going in that match. And they finally did. And to me, it's been the best match of the tournament. And even though it was the best match of the tournament, I cannot recommend it to anyone. It's like a 3 1/4, 3.5. I think I went 3.5. So I was just so desperate to like anything. Because they did, the closing stretch was good. And Suwama's intensity was very good in that match. Lee didn't bring much to the table, but Suwama's intensity was fantastic. And he was slapping the shit out of him.
Stinks.
But it's like, and I think Ashino's been pretty good, and Miyahara's been pretty good, of course, because he's arguably the best wrestler in the world. But no one's been great. And there hasn't been a standout match yet. And you could excuse that the first 2 nights when they're wrestling in front of 300 people in who the fuck knows where, Japan. But when you get to Korakuen Hall, and you've got Kento Miyahara versus Ashino, and Jake Lee versus Suwama.
Those are the 2 big matches in the 2 blocks. Like, that's why I watched that show, because I'm thinking, all right, well, this is it. Like, and nothing else worked. But we're in Korakuen. These are the 2 big matches, the standout matches of both blocks. All right, let's go. And
you got to give it. You got to have a great match by now in this tournament. I mean, this is a joke. And again, it's weird because it's not like the matches are bad, and it's not like the work is bad. It's just like this lack of effort and this lack of creativity, and just this overall kind of sense of get in, get out. And this is the champion motherfucking carnival. This is where it's supposed to all come together, and this is your showcase event, your showcase tournament, and maybe they just don't feel like taking big bumps and beating the shit out of each other in front of fucking quarter-filled COVID crowds. That's the only explanation I can come up for in this thing. Now, the Champion Carnival has been slow to develop the last couple of years. It's a tournament that starts slow and ends strong. That's been the case the last 2 or 3 years. The problem with this year is it's only 6 dates. They don't have time to slow roll this thing.
Right. There's not much more to go, guys. So it's now or never.
This is it. And there's very little dead weight. It's just the top guys. So there's been like matches that on paper should have been excellent matches every night. You know, because of the small field and the fact that it's only 5 nights of block matches. You know, and we've hit Korakuen now, and the effort in Korakuen wasn't any better than the effort on the other nights. And it's been very disappointing. Are they telling little stories? They are. Zeus versus Jiro on night 3. I didn't even know this when I watched the match. I found this out after the fact. They did a little Twitter angle with each other. And Jiro said that Zeus was going to gas, and he's just a beefed up steroid guy or whatever. And, you know, he doesn't have anything in his arsenal except for chops. You know, and he was really ragging on him on Twitter. So what Zeus did is Zeus has been using kind of this neck twister as a finish where he basically just rips the guy's head off. It's actually a really cool finishing
I like
move.
that for Zeus. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So he puts Jiro in like that neck crank or whatever you want to call it, front face lock. Everyone's calling it something different. And he could have finished them, but he let go of it, and then he beat him with a chop to the face.
Nice.
Because of the shit that Jiro was talking on Twitter. I didn't know that when I watched the match, so I thought the finish was just absurd and funny. I'm like, why did he let go of this move and to just chop the guy in the head? But then when I found out that they worked a little Twitter angle, I was like, oh, wow, you know, that makes it kind of a cool finish. So they are doing little things like that, and they are telling this story where Enfants are, you know, being sleazy in Ashino's matches, and they attacked Aoyagi, and this uneasiness between Aoyagi and Miyahara. So there's stuff going on. It's just the matches are not delivering. And they've only got 2 nights left. I assume the final will be good. But I'm not as confident as I was last week. But what are we going to get between now and the final? You know, those 2 block deciders. I mean, it's like when Miyahara faces Ishikawa and Zeus faces Lee to decide the blocks. I'm sorry, those matches have to be great.
You would hope, yeah.
No, they have to be, especially with the way the tournament has gone, because at some point they have to deliver here. So if not then when? So, I don't know. Very disappointing from an effort standpoint. And it's not going to take much for the N1 to surpass this thing. I mean, the G1 is going to have more great matches on night 1.
Yeah, I would say Okada and Ibushi is going to blow away just about anything going on. Yeah, I'd say, you know, as we kick off on the 19th, whatever opens that, Will Osprey and Yujiro has a chance to be better than every Champion Carnival match potentially. And if not so, definitely by the time Okada and Ibushi finalize the night or go in at the end, that should hopefully be settle the score there. Let's hope. Goddamn, if this G1 doesn't have, do you have any worry? Do you have any worry about G1 whatsoever?
No.
You have none? Okay, you think they'll be full blast, everybody working their asses off?
Everyone's going to work hard. The clap crowds are a concern, but I think the match quality is going to be so good that it's going to overcome the clap crowds. So I think it'll hurt some of the matches, but I think the matches that are supposed to deliver, I think will. The G1's a different animal. I mean, no one's going to like hearing what I'm about to say, but every year people will tell you, the Carnival's going to be better than the G1, the N1 victory. Look at that lineup. And the G1 just beats the living shit out of both of these tournaments every year because it's just the best. It's the best roster on earth. And it's just, there's a working standard. And it's just, and it's too much depth. There's 19 nights of that fucking thing with the best roster on earth. These other tournaments, even when they're good, they can't compare. They just can't stack up depth-wise. And then, and the best of the best in the G1 is always going to be better than the best of these other tournaments too. So, no, I'm not really worried about the G1. And I think the N1 can be sneaky good. And I guess that's a decent transition as we set people up for that, because that starts on, unless you have anything else to say about the carnival.
No. Just that, yeah, I hope, I was anticipating sitting down and watching a lot of the carnival, but yeah, your reviews, the reviews we've had up at voiceswrestling.com have definitely, you're not alone there. There's not a lot of people thinking that this carnival is really delivering on a major level. So I do hope the final nights, because I don't want to hand wave the entire tournament. I don't want to just say, forget it, I'm not going to watch it. But I do hope that, those finals really do step up, because, it would stink to have this tournament, which I think is a pretty good roster and a pretty good lineup, and have it result in just really nothing of note would be a real huge disappointment.
Yeah, they've really got 4 more chances, I think. The Kento Aoyagi match, the 2 block deciders, and the final.
Yeah.
That's the 4 chances they have. And my confidence level isn't super high based on what we've seen. But that restarts again on Sunday.
Yep.
So subscribe. N1 starts on Friday.
Yep, September 18th.
A block, Go Shiozaki, Kaito Kiyomiya, Masaki Mochizuki, Masa Kitamiya, Kazushi Sakuraba, and Manabu Soya. The big thing there is I just did a written review, didn't publish it yet, but just did a review of a tag match where Sakuraba tapped out Go Shiozaki. So that adds a little juice to their match when they get around to it in the N1. Now, Shiozaki's going to win that. But that was a nice little piece of booking, because it plants a little bit of doubt when those 2 guys get in the ring together, because Sakuraba tapped him out, which was a surprising finish, because Sakuraba never beats anybody. This guy's supposedly this, world-class, super dangerous MMA killer, but he's never seems to be truly presented.
Right, yeah.
But I really like that tag, and I like the finish, because for once he finished someone in the center of the
which
ring.
is cool. Yeah, that was always the thing that we had issues with in New Japan Pro Wrestling. It wasn't necessarily Sakuraba himself. I think there's a way to use him and utilize him properly, but the problem in New Japan is he was just kind of like a dude that was just kind of there, and you're like, they're talking about how much of he's a killer, but then he would just go out and have a kind of a standard-ass match. Sometimes he'd lose, sometimes he'd win, and it was like, well, yeah, I don't really buy that this guy is like a world-class fighter or a guy that can tap you out at any point. So
the problem is he would put guys in holds and they wouldn't tap.
Yeah, they would just sit there forever, and it's like, well, is this guy really that good? Or not?
And that kills the gimmick, So, and then let's face it, his effort levels aren't always peak. He's a lazy guy a lot of the time, and I get that he's 50. I understand that, but anyway, I don't want to bury him. I wanted to put him over because he tapped out Shiozaki in that 6-man tag. I think it was the main event of a Korakuen show, so that gives a little intrigue there. Plus, you have Kaito Kiyomiya, the former champion, in that block. And Masaki Mochizuki, who's going to have good matches with everybody.
Yeah, right.
So that's what's going on in that block. I think Sakuraba tapping Shiozaki adds a little bit of juice to what I think was the lesser of the 2 blocks, because now that match has a little something. Would you give a shit about that match before I told you that he tapped him out?
Oh, no, God, no. I would have definitely skipped it. I would have 100% skipped it, so I'm glad you did do that, because now I'm thinking about watching it, so...
It gives it a little bit of juice. Okay, and then the B block, I think, is the stronger block. Kano, Nakajima, Naomichi Marufuji, Taniguchi, Takashi Sugiura, and Inamura. So you've got Kano, Nakajima, and Sugiura, who are all going to have – that's going to be all against each other. And then, depending what you get out of Marufuji effort-wise. And Reds win, a little closer to that fridge, Rich. Reds win. 1-0. Let me tell you, 5 in a row. We got a chance at this thing, Rich. We're in the mix. 5 in a row. We got a chance at this thing. The White Sox are going to crush our dreams this weekend. I can feel it. So anyway, I think the B block is stronger in terms of match quality. Also, Nakajima just turned on Shiozaki and joined Kongo.
Yes.
So that Nakajima-Kano match becomes very interesting from that aspect. There's a lot of theories. Is Nakajima joining Kano to sort of rot them from the inside? Because Kano just knocked him out in a match for the national title not that long ago. Now Nakajima, what is this? Can't beat him, join him? What's going on here, right? So there's a lot of intrigue there. And Takashi Sugiura is always a killer. So those would be the 3 guys and the 3 key guys in that block. But the N1, look, it's stacking up. It's looking like a good tournament. I've watched a lot of Noah in the build-up with the fans. Rich, it's safe to jump back in.
Okay.
I know
all right.
I know you were super down on the no crowd, Noah, and I don't blame you. It's been good.
Okay.
It's been good. Rich, I even went notebook on Kiyomiya versus Keiji Muto. I thought that was a 4-star. I enjoyed the hell out of that match. Muto beat him, which a lot of people had a problem with. The Marufuji Shiozaki match, I went no book. The Nakajima Kano match with the knockout, I thought that was a notebook match. Noah has been good with the crowds back.
Okay, all right.
And I think, and I've watched just about all of it.
Don't steer me wrong.
In the build-up.
I'm never watching again. I'm never watching again if you're wrong. So
I am way more into this tournament after watching all of the shit leading up to it than I was before I watched everything. I'm telling you. They're on a decent... No, you watch. What match did you watch that you really liked? You watched the hour draw.
Yes, yeah, and I did enjoy it. So
was that Shiozaki and Kano, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so, I mean, the one match you gave a shot to, and it was an hour draw on top of that, you were into.
It was an uphill climb, but yeah, I was definitely into it. So, okay. Because I'm just glad the effort level's back with them. Because I kind of had the same thing that you were thinking about with All Japan, where it was like, all right, let's put some fucking effort into these matches, guys. Let's go. Let's get the energy. Because I think we're starting to see, and we'll talk about it a little bit more with some of the other shows we're talking about, people are starting to learn how to work in front of small audiences, no audiences, realizing what the match types that work, what the match types that don't work. And Noah was very slow to adapt to that, I thought. But I'm glad to hear that they seemingly have and realize that, yeah, they got to put that extra little oomph into their stuff if they wanted to really, keep my interest.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no. It's they've been very good in the lead up, and I have high hopes for the tournament. And being halfway through the Carnival and seeing what's left, I think it's a pretty safe bet that the N1 is going to deliver at a higher level than the Carnival. See, Carnival just simply doesn't have much left. Like we said, they really only have 4 shots to have great matches. And what are the odds all 4 are going to deliver based on what we've seen so far?
Right.
And the N1 is coming in hot. And, I really like some of the storytelling they've done leading in. Because they've told some stories here since we talked about the blocks initially that have kind of added some juice to some of these matches. So, anyway, that gets started on Friday, and I'm actually pretty excited about it. But I don't know what else there is to say until they get going. You have any other thing?
No.
You got predictions, or what do you think? What kind of?
See, I don't have a good feel for Noah booking right now, so I don't know that I'd have an educated prediction. It would just basically me saying names without any real reasoning behind that. So I don't know. So
that's not fair. I put you on the spot.
Actually, I'm glad I did that. You know what? I'm honestly glad I did that because now when I do jump back in, I sometimes I like kind of taking a break from a promotion for a little while and then jumping back in and being like, hey, seeing the building blocks. Because sometimes when you obsess and just watch everything, you don't get surprised. You don't have that same intrigue. Like, there's nothing better than discovering a new promotion, discovering new wrestling. Like, that happened to us with, like, Australia, where we, like, discovered Australia and we're like, holy shit, or many, many years ago, discovering, like, European wrestling. It's, like, awesome when you can do that. So I'm kind of glad that I did take that break from Noah, and now I'm coming in at presumably a pretty hot period without knowing really what's going to happen. So I have those, shows to kind of help me get back into it and just going to follow along and see what happens as it goes on. So I really have no preconceived, like, thoughts or predictions of who's going to win, so which is cool.
I think that Kiyomiya has been laying in the weeds for a while now since he lost the title. It's interesting that, and he even lost to Muto, like I said. Mochizuki's not winning the block as an outsider. And the other 3, Kitamiya, Sakuraba, and Soya, they're obviously not going to win the block. So it comes down to Shiozaki and Kiyomiya. What's the point of Shiozaki coming out of the block? Right. So that just screams to me that Kiyomiya is going to beat Shiozaki in the key match in that block and advance to the final, which means he's a threat, to win the whole tournament, obviously, at that point. Because if he beats Shiozaki, that can set up a title match either way. Whether he wins the tournament ultimately or loses in the final, he'll have a win over Shiozaki. And then the other side, obviously it's just screaming to come down to Kano and Nakajima and whatever's going on between those guys. So, I'm going to go with Kiyomiya in the A block. And since Kano I'll go with Nakajima in the B block. 2 guys really who were like the last 2 champions.
Yeah.
And they kind of just, and then from there, with Shiozaki as champ and Nakajima just turning, why not go with Nakajima here? Right? And then he challenges his former Axis partner in the title match. And I think Nakajima is primed for another run.
Absolutely. I think it's time. I think we're definitely at time. He's a completely different character, different transformation, different worker, different everything than he was the last time. So yeah, I think the name might be the same, but the fresh coat of paint on him it will definitely make it feel new and unique for sure.
He is nothing like the dry baby face that he was in that failure of a run. And let's call it what it was. I love the guy, but that business failure, one of the worst Noah GHC runs ever. And he just has completely reinvented himself. So, and I think the way I laid it out makes sense, but we'll see. But I expect the effort level to be better. And Noah just has a certain match style right now. It's just nasty. It's vicious. And it's fun to, now it could be a drag when the matches go too long and the fans aren't into it. But when these Noah matches have landed recently, they've all been very, very good. So I've got high hopes coming into this thing.
All right, so let's talk about another tournament going on. We'll move to America now. The ROH Pure Title Tournament. Joe, I don't know what have you watched the first night?
Yeah, I did. I watched it today.
Okay, so ROH Pure Title Tournament. This fucking rocks so much. First, before we talk about what actually happened on that first night, let's talk about the rules. They gave us rules immediately. If for people that did not watch it, it is free on ROHWrestling.com. It's free on Fight. There's many other methods to watch this, and I think no excuses. Watch this. It's like 50 minutes. You hit play, you get 50 minutes of solid either action or great videos, profile pieces. We'll talk about those here in a sec. But we start out, we get Quinn McKay.
Every episode of ROH TV is free on Fight. You just click and play.
Yeah.
I don't know if a lot of people know that.
I don't think they do, and I don't think Ring of Honor does a great job of telling you that either. They're also up on ROHWrestling.com too. You just go to ROHWrestling.com/ I think it's like latest TV show, and it like pops up right away, and you're like, oh okay, like because it's a mess to figure out if it's going to show up on your like sometimes I get it like a quarter of the time on some weird channel that almost barely exists on my network. So
my DVR has stopped picking it up. I mean, it hasn't recorded it since July, so. But it's very easy to watch in these other places. So give me a rule, and I will quickly react to it. Very similar to the old Pure rules, but a little different.
Yeah.
Too.
Oh, there's one rule. Oh, Joe, this one rule felt like it was for us. That lizard man, yes. Who has been in our DMs before, in character, which is the best part about it.
He finally gave that up, though. Like,
oh, that's right, he did. Yeah, but he would be like, hiss, ah, nah, nah. We're like, what are you asking? Like, and he'd be like, oh, yeah, here's the story. Yeah, hiss. I'm like, okay, thank you.
And then do the web translates.
Right.
And then it's in English. And then finally he just dropped it and is just like, when we have a question, he just kind of answers it. So, anyway.
Which is good. But he listened to us with this one. So, anyway, before we talk about the profile pieces, all this sort of stuff, Quinn McKay goes over the rules of the ROH Pure Title Tournament in 2020. So, this is a return. This thing hadn't been crowned, I think, 2005, 2006. It was Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness had a match in Europe that unified the titles, and the Pure Title went away after that. So, it's very similar to the original one, but a little bit different. So, okay, first rule we have for the ROH Pure Title Tournament, every match begins and ends with the Code of Honor handshake.
Old school rule.
Fine with me, man. I love it.
That's from the old school. Yeah.
One of the things that attracted me to ROH in the first place was that every match started with a handshake. Some people found it lame. Some people found it stupid. But what was great about it, and credit to Gabe, as always, is it added an extra level of heat that a heel could capitalize on.
Yes.
That 90% of the time people would shake hands, but that one guy who wouldn't shake a hand, fuck that dude, that guy's an asshole. He was immediately a heel. And that's how wrestling works.
Christopher Daniels refused to respect the Code of Honor in the early days, and it built in instant storyline.
Yes, it's so
easy
simple.
Stuff.
It's like, well, that's how rules in all of wrestling used to be. And then when you didn't follow the rules, it was like, well, fuck this guy. Now we've lost that. We've lost complete sight of that. But it's such an easy storyline thing to do if you just have most people follow the rules, then a few people don't follow the rules. Those few people that don't stand out. It's not hard. But anyway, so every match begins and ends with a Code of Honor handshake. Your thumbs up on there. I'm thumbs up on that. All right. That's where it gets a little complicated. I know you weren't a huge fan of the original ROH Pure, and I kind of agree with you in one respect, but we'll talk about this one. Each wrestler has 3 rope breaks to stop submission holds and pinfalls. After a wrestler exhausts his rope breaks, submission and pin attempts on or under the ropes by his opponent are legal. So once you use those 3 rope breaks, The dude can put you in a headlock, he can put you in a submission, whatever he wants to do, he can do it no matter what. You can grab the ropes, you can be under the ropes, you can be anywhere. It's not going to be a break. So once you break those 3 rope breaks, all bets are off, and they can do whatever they want, basically, submission-wise. So are you cool or not cool with the 3 rope break rule?
Yeah, that's the old school pure rules. I think you can tell an interesting story in the match if you utilize that rule correctly and wisely. So sometimes it doesn't factor into the match. Other times the wrestlers incorporate it. Like we saw with Jay Lethal in his match that we're going to talk about right there on the first night against who did he wrestle? Dalton Castle.
Yeah.
Out of instinct, he grabbed for a rope break in the first minute of the match, and you could see that he regretted it. And Dalton Castle was like mocking him. Because he was like, oh, man, I burned one of my rope breaks on a hold that never would have tapped me out because I just lost my head. And even the commentators were talking about that.
Yeah,
so.
and you can utilize it the way that Wheeler Yuta and Gresham utilized it too, where Yuta was like, I'm just going to use this right away because like if Gresham, if I try to stay in this hold, I'm against Jonathan Gresham. He could tap my ass out in 2 seconds. So it's like, no, let me get to the ropes and let me break it. That's a wise use of it. Is hey, like it's similar to in an Iron Man match or whatever. Like, hey, look, just I'll take the fall here because I don't want to, or I'll tap out to this submission early in the match because, or the best 2 out of 3 falls, concept too. Where like, I'll take the fall here because if I sit in this lock for 10 minutes or whatever, my knee's going to be ravaged or whatever. So it's like, tap out, grab the rope, whatever, it's okay. So a lot of ways that you can use it. And you're absolutely right. The problem with the ROH Pure is that some people were good at the style and some people were bad at the style. The people that were good at the style, it was awesome. They told the story well. The 3 rope breaks all played a part. And then there were some guys that just went in there and had like normal ass matches. And it was like, oh, well, that, you can just have a normal ass match without these rules. But no, the ones that were good utilize these rules properly. So you're Bryan Danielson types, which is not a surprise because he's great at everything he does. So,
well, then Nigel McGuinness would cheat in these matches for heat.
Yes, exactly.
Which you're not going to be able to do this time around.
No. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a sec. So, closed fist punches to the face are not permitted. Only open hand slaps or chops to the face are allowed. Punches to other parts of the body are permitted, excluding low blows. The first use of a closed fist will get a warning. The second will get a disqualification.
Yeah, so I can totally see somebody at some point in the tournament punching someone in the face behind the referee's back.
Yeah, Silas Young is 100% punching Fred Yehi in the face with the referee's back turned, for sure.
And it being the turning point of a match, yeah. So there's interesting ways. All of these rules are just devices to tell stories.
Yes, and which is what rules in wrestling are. We've lost the plot. Like, that's what the rules are for. That's why rules are good in wrestling, because you break them and then you get heat. Like, it's so simple. And just 2020 wrestling has lost the plot with just, go out there and do whatever the fuck you want. Who the hell cares? Like, no, make those stories. You can tell so many stories. With every one of these rules, you could tell a different story in a different match. Everybody can have it. It's so obvious and so easy, but people don't do it. So, all right. As in standard ROH matches, there will be a 20 count when a wrestler is on the floor. That one, whatever,
Yeah, well, they're just telling you could have countouts. So,
all right. And Lizard Man, listen to us with this one. Outside interference will result in automatic termination from the roster for the wrestler that interferes. You run out, you're fucking on the street, pal. Get out of here. Go home.
Yeah. You're fired.
Yeah, go enjoy death matches in fucking Indianapolis, pal. You're done.
Yeah. I don't know who that's a shot at, but I'll take it. But yeah, you're fired. That's great. It's just telling you, listen, you're not getting fucking Bullet Club bullshit here. You're getting clean finishes. You're not getting, you may not get clean finishes, but you're not getting outside interference finishes. So it just sets the table for that. You could have a scenario where maybe a guy who's not a full-time part of the roster tries to get crafty and then you quote unquote fire him. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're just telling you you're not going to get outside interference here.
Yeah, it's just their best way to say it. Like, there's again, people will cheat, people will do stuff, as we said, but it will all be in the context of, breaking these rules or whatever. But yeah, what it tells you is expect, like, when you're watching in a match, you can invest in the match because the match will be a result of one man either being better than the other guy or out wrestling the other guy or outsmarting the other guy. It won't be because a dude runs out. And I love that. I love that they just add that little thing to let you know, give you confidence that you are investing 10 to 15 minutes in these matches and you are going to get a result of your investment, which is perfect. Because the thing I cannot fucking stand about New Japan Strong or any of these things, the evil stuff is waiting 30 minutes for some guy to come out with a wire. And it's like, oh my God, what did I just wait 30 minutes for? You know, the classic WCW Nitro thing where everybody just stands up and looks at the entranceway like, all right, like, let's go, get the guy out so we can get this thing over with. So I like that they're doing that. So the other rules, we can just kind of rapid fire through those. There will be 2 blocks, single elimination format. Round 1 matches have a 15-minute time limit. Block semifinals have a 20-minute time limit. Block finals have a 30-minute time limit. The tournament final has a 1-hour time limit. There will be 3 judges for each match, and time limit draws will go to a judge's decision. So, all right, let's talk about the blocks and then the 2 matches that were on the first night. So, Block A, first round matchups are Jay Lethal versus Dalton Castle. We saw that on episode 1. We'll talk about that in a sec.
So they're calling these blocks, but don't be confused. It's a single elimination ladder.
Exactly, yeah. It may as well just be a ladder tournament, but so.
For whatever reason, they're using the verbiage of blocks. I don't know why.
Yeah, there's no need to, but that's fine if they want to. So, Jay Lethal versus Dalton Castle, David Finlay versus Rocky Romero, Fred Yehai versus Silas Young, Tracy Williams versus Rust Taylor, who people have seen from New Japan Strong. Otherwise, not a ton of other like super surprise. I think Fred Yehai is a great addition to the pure tournament. Finlay comes in also from New Japan Pro Wrestling. Rocky Romero also from New Japan. It's basically just available guys. Guys are in this country. Good wrestlers that are in this country and available. And that's essentially what you're filling out the A block with. But let's talk about Jay Lethal versus Dalton Castle first. That was on episode 1. What'd you think of this match? And most importantly, what'd you think of the profile pieces before the matches? I think those are going to be the standouts of this show, because from the moment you start this tournament, Quinn McKay goes over the rules, and then you go into promo packages. Jay Lethal talking about how he wanted the pure title. He's trying to get back to where he was when he first came into the company. Yeah, he's done a bunch of stuff, but he wanted that title. He's got that title on his mind. He's always been thinking about that title. And then I thought, so far, my favorite piece that they've told so far was Dalton Castle being like, yeah, I'm flamboyant. Yeah, I got all this, but I'm a goddamn good wrestler. I was a fucking champion in high school, a champion in college. I'll beat your ass. Like, God, I love that.
A champion at beach wrestling.
I'd never heard of beach wrestling before. I will not lie that I Googled beach wrestling immediately afterwards.
And then he said, oh, by the way, I'm also a former world champion.
Yeah.
So I'm really great at this, And then there was not a lockup on this show until 22 minutes into the hour. So the explanation of the rules, the personality profiles, I mean, this just felt so different than every other kind of pro wrestling that's out there. And look, you can't do this on Wednesday nights if you're AEW or NXT, because this stuff, unfortunately, with channel changers. And we know that because they've shown us that data. And anytime there's not a match going on, people are flipping over to check the other show. So it's like, but ROH can get away with doing this. They're not going head-to-head with anybody. Their show is on demand. And, God, this was a refreshing breath of fresh air for a pro wrestling presentation. I don't want all my pro wrestling to be like this. Rich, I think that's where people get us wrong. I don't want all of my pro wrestling to be like this. But it's nice that there is some that is like this.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'd like more of this kind of pro wrestling interweaved with – I just want less silliness. I don't want elimination of all silliness and fun. It's just right now there's just feels like that's what we're being overwhelmed with. So something like this is just such a nice change of pace. And even New Japan Strong outside of the Kenta matches have been a nice change of pace. I enjoy that hour every Friday night. And these personality profiles, man, were they great. And it gets the wrestlers over in a whole new way. And I can't praise them enough. And I am so looking forward to the rest of them, especially for guys I don't know much about. I want to see Rust Taylor talk about himself.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, like, and I honestly think, like, yeah, you're saying, like, AEW can't do this and NXT can't do this. I don't think they can do it quite, like you said, they can't go 22 minutes or whatever, but I think it's a lost art in all of pro wrestling is these type of personality pieces. And maybe you can't do it on Wednesday nights on TNT or whatever, But goddamn, you got YouTube channels. You have Twitter. Tell the story. Tell me why I should care about this, man. Tell me and the best part about these, and anytime companies do these, the best part is you don't have to come up with a story. Most of these people have interesting stories on their own. The most interesting, we talk about Cruiserweight Classic. Remember how we raved about the Cruiserweight Classic? Because it was hit record. All right, TJ Perkins, talk about your life. Yep. 10 minutes, boom. Okay. 5 minutes, that's it. It's all you need. Like the Mayhem Classic has that same thing too.
That Jay Lethal wants to be the first 2-time pure champion.
We know that now. What's your story? What's your story? What's your motivation? Why are you here? And what do you want to accomplish? The end. That's all you need. And if you give every one of these wrestlers, every pro wrestler in the world, you give them those bullet points, they can cut a fucking 5-minute promo, a 2-minute promo, a 2-minute video package or whatever about themselves. And again, you don't have to get crazy. There doesn't be nuts stories. Just the guy can add a little bit of storyline flavor and a little bit of real flavor, like Dalton Castle did, where he says, I'm this shit, I did this and this. Oh yeah, and I was also Ring of Honor World Champion. So I'm a tough dude and I'm really good at what I do. So the end. Yeah. It's not hard. It's so simple. And I think all pro wrestling does not utilize this enough. And we'll talk about a show where I think this could have been used a lot, could have been used to kind of tell the story for people that might not know. And they just didn't do it. But I thought this was incredible where you just, in 5 minutes what these guys want to do, what their motivations is, and their background. So if you've never heard of Jay Lethal before, you've never heard of Dalton Castle, even if you have heard of him, you got a whole new perspective on what's motivating them in this tournament. So
no, that's the thing. It adds a whole new dimension to these guys that you might even be tired of.
Yeah, I've never been into Dalton Castle at all, but I was like, let's go, man. Beach wrestling. My man. Like, we're going to talk about a guy in the B block who I always thought was a geek. We've buried him on the show multiple times. I was fucking ready to go. I was like, dude, yes, let's go, Wheeler Yuta. Let's go. Like we'll jump to the B block with his. Well, I guess the Jay Lethal Dalton Castle match. Do you have any huge feedback on the match? I thought it was well worked. I mean, it's solid as fuck wrestling. Like there's nothing more to say.
No, I think the match was fine. I mean, I thought the personality profiles were actually better than the match and more interesting than the match itself. The match was well worked though, and you had Lethal making that mistake early and using up his rope breaks early. And it was very well worked. But I would expect these two to go out there and have a very well-worked match, especially, in this style, so it was fine. It was nothing that, rocked my world or anything, but it was good.
Yeah. And it's fine. That's honestly, that's all I really want out of TV wrestling. We talked about with NWA when NWA was often firing is I'm fine, dude. If you want to occasionally have a match that really stands out or build up to, the final should be good. The semifinal should be good. But if your regular, tournament matches are just like good matches, fine match, that's fine with me, man. I don't care. Make the person. I just want to be into the personalities. I want to be into the story and into that. That to me is a bigger hook than every single one of these matches having to be, a 4-star plus classic or whatever. It doesn't have to do that. Like, make me care. Get me the point. Let me know who won, who lost, and then when we get to the finals, we get to the semifinals and stuff. That's when you then break out the big guns.
No, I don't need great matches to be entertained in pro wrestling. I need. You don't want bad matches, but TV wrestling doesn't have to be loaded with 4-star matches.
No, go watch a classic 605. It's great promo, squash match, great promo, good promo, squash match, promo, and then a main event that was solid. You know what I mean? It was fine.
Hopefully, on a good episode. Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's that's exactly that. It's a different dynamic than a pay-per-view or something where you're like, okay, I want to see the best of the best now. So a match like this was perfectly fine for this episode of TV. You get a bunch of great matches, that's a bonus.
Yeah, for sure. Then we go to the B block there. We had Jonathan Gresham, Wheeler Yuta. We had the 2 videos. The Gresham video was solid, but the Wheeler Yuta video, this is a guy, I've never been into Wheeler Yuta. I've always thought he was kind of a geek, kind of a dork. Dude, in 5 minutes, he told his entire life story, and I was all in on this guy. I love him. How do you not love this guy? Like,
I didn't know you were a big Wheeler Utah hater, but okay.
No, we joked about him in the past. We just kind of said he looked like a geek, and we always said like his name was cooler than his wrestling.
I don't remember picking on him. But I'll take
we picked on him back in the day. He just wasn't like, to me. I just had no reason to care. He was just this guy that came out in this weird gear and like.
You know what I remember now was his MLW stuff. We were kind of like, he's just wasn't really. You're right.
Because they never told this story. They told this story in 5 minutes. I was all in on Wheeler Yuta.
Right. It's a different. Well, there you go. That's the difference between just being a guy on the show and telling us who the guy is on the show. This is speaking to your point right here. So, yeah.
you know, he was basically just like, you know, I've always wanted to be a pro wrestler. I've always wanted to get in the ring, and I trained at an early age, and, you know, I adapted. I went to Japan, and my mom was, you know, half Japanese, and I learned, you know, and there he is running up steps, and there he is, you know, doing push-ups and sit-ups all, you know, next to the Buddha statue. It's like, again, it was awesome stuff. It lets you know the journey that this guy has been on to get to this point. And he's like, now I'm here, and now I'm proving myself against one of the best in the world in Jonathan Gresham, or I'm going to, you know, prove to him and prove to the world that I belong and all this sort of stuff. It's like, dude, how do you not root for this guy? And then Jonathan Gresham's just like, I'm fucking good. I'm gonna beat everybody. Like, it's like, all right, cool. There we go. Like,
yeah, and then the match. I thought this was the better of the two matches.
Oh, for sure, blew it away. Yeah, blew it away.
Get out! Get out! Hold on one second.
That's fine.
Slide. He's safe. Oh, I'll take that too. Oh, home run would have been nice, but I'll take that too. I'm having a good night, Rich. Man, I'm not going to start adding the money in my head, but I'm having a good night.
Are you going to look at fridges tonight, or do you have one in mind for your...
I got the fridge covered.
Okay, so you just need to click the checkout, right?
Now I'm stocking it. Oh, man, 6 inches. Anyway, I thought this was the better of the two matches. The finish in particular. God, Gresham. I mean, he was jumping up and just driving that knee into Utah's leg. And then what was it that had Utah tapping? After he drove his knees into his leg, he just kind of like cranked back on his leg and had him tapping out. I mean, that whole sequence was so vicious and so not what you see in a standard pro wrestling match. They clearly worked the whole match to that style and then worked the finish to the style. And I never saw anybody do what Gresham did in the closing moments of that match, where he was just doing those knee drops to the leg, and then Utah just couldn't take pain.
I want to say, and so people can correct me if I'm wrong, I think Utah tapped just from Gresham throwing his knee into the fucking mat 20 times in a row. I think he was just like, I'm done. Like, that's what it was. I don't know if he ever cranked it in. I don't know if he actually ever put a submission on. I think he just fucking slammed his knee in the ground for 10 times. Yeah.
I thought of it. He was driving the knee into the legs. Then he was picking up the leg and just driving it into the mat.
Right. I thought he tapped from that.
That's why I couldn't think of the submission, because there wasn't one.
Yeah.
He was picking up the man's leg and just driving the knee into the mat until Utah was just tapping out frantically. Holy shit, did that finish rule?
Yeah.
Good God, that ruled.
Did you even notice that there weren't any fans?
I was gonna say. This is gonna sound crazy.
I heard a crowd when Gresham was throwing him down. I swore I heard a crowd.
Rich, this is going to sound nuts. I almost think it helps. For this style of wrestling.
It's like a little dojo pro, like dojo wrestling type thing, where we're just guys in here and we're just going to grapple and figure out who the better grappler is. It makes sense that they would just show up at a gym and fight one another.
Yeah, it almost adds to the ambiance of it all. You know, I'm not going to go as far as to say I'd rather not have the fans. I'd obviously rather have the fans there. But there's almost an element to it where it's just these guys showing up to a fucking gym to have this tournament with no bullshit and figure out who the best wrestler is.
Yeah, and they don't have to be showy. They don't have to look to a crowd.
Yeah.
They get in the ring, they put their gear away, and they look at the other guy, the bell rings, and they fight, you know?
Yeah. Dalton Castle didn't have boys with him. He wasn't strutting around like a peacock. You know what I mean? It was like the stripped down environment almost it works for this. You know, so I'll frame it this way. For all of the empty arena wrestling I've seen, it worked the best for this. I'll say that. It was less of a It was less of a what's the word I'm looking for? Detractor for this than it has been for any of the other empty arena wrestling I've seen.
Sure. So that's that. So as we said, other ones, we're going to get David Finlay, Rocky Romero. I think the Rocky Romero profile piece is out. I think you can watch that one right now. It is predictably great as well, because Rocky Romero again.
How about what we talked about last week? We're getting Delirious versus Matt Sydal in a St. Louis independent wrestling.
Yeah, I'm very curious how the video packages for that one is going to go. That one, we'll see. I think I could see Sydal's. I have no idea what Delirious's promo package is going to be like, but. Maybe strips it off a little bit and just says, like, look, I can fight too. Or I don't know. I'm very curious how it goes.
I don't know if it was in our Discord or on Twitter, but it definitely wasn't my thought, so I don't want to take credit for it. But unfortunately, I can't credit because I don't remember who said it. You think Delirious is taking the spot of Party Marty here?
I think so.
Think Party Marty would have been in this thing?
I think so.
I think so too.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah.
I don't think Lizard Man was the first.
Was a choice for the ROH Pure title tournament.
Yeah. And I think when
noted rule follower Delirious. Yeah,
I think when Party Marty tiptoed his way out of the spotlight here, that I think then maybe they figured out, well, if Delirious is going to take his place, let's stick him in there with Seidel. Little history. Delirious is sneaky in that way. Remember every year he'd wrestle Gato in Korakuen Hall?
Yes.
Sort of as a wink. Little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We're the Booker men, and we're going to wrestle each other. That's kind of what this is. You know, I'm going to get in there with a guy I came up with. I've wrestled him a million times in front of no fans. So why not wrestle him in front of no fans in this tournament? And, you know, but I find it hard to believe he would have been an original pick.
No, I think he was there, and they decided, all right, well, Lizard Man, you're up. So, and I guess they didn't want to, you know, because they have alternates as well if somebody, you know, gets hurt or gets COVID or something like that.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's the other thing. Like, if anyone drops out for any reason, there's no bias. We've got alternates.
Yeah, you still got to fight. You're not getting through without a fight.
So they got guys at the ready to step in for this thing too. So yeah, I'm into it. It's something else to watch.
The production was the production value of itself was awesome too, and we'll talk about that with a few other shows as well. But I thought, the video quality was good, the sound quality was good, everything was good. It was just like it looked like a professional operation. It looked like it was in a decent sized arena that was lit well. It's just like it's people are getting it. People are unfortunately understanding how to do empty arena wrestling. I hope for not much longer, but they're getting it. So it's cool.
Yeah.
All right, so then two more shows we're going to talk about here. We got about a half an hour left. Where do you want to start? We got RevPro and we got United Wrestling Network's Primetime Live, baby.
I had to mute you. I was coughing. Over here. Let's do RevPro Epic Encounters too. I watched this, and I raved about Epic Encounters 1, and I thought this was even better. I thought they followed it up with an even better show. I had 3 notebook matches on this show, and I know you only saw about half of it. But what 3 matches did you watch? You said you watched 3 matches.
So I watched the final 3. I watched Osprey versus Nguyen, the Priestley Hater, the women's tag, and then the unification main event. So,
okay, so the best match on the show is Mark Haskins versus JJ.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard that after I watched, so I will have to go back and check that out.
I was blown away by how great this was. I had never seen JJ Gale before. And Haskins is a guy who he was really coming on before Ring of Honor shut down. I was really enjoying a lot of his work, and he's not a guy that I particularly had any fondness for previously. I thought he was, an okay wrestler when I'd see him now and then, but he really was coming on strong in ROH. And my God, did he, and I'm going to give him the credit because he's the veteran, but he carried this Gale kid to a fucking awesome match. I went 4 1/4 on this match. And I was flirting with 4.5, but I didn't have the guts to do it. Just constant action, 13 minutes that felt like 6 minutes. One of those kind of matches. Constant action. I don't want to give away too much of it since you didn't see it. But what a tremendous match that was. And this show just got off to a great start right off the bat. The one thing I will say, you mentioned production values. That's not the case here. This is like, okay, I should
no. I will say on a different scale, I think they do an incredible job. They because it's not that hard. You get a fucking light, you get a camera that was made this decade, you get a few curtains, and you're ready to go.
Here's my problem. Why is it so fucking smoky in that?
That's just Brit Rest style, baby. I can't tell you why. The Brit Rest companies love smoke. I don't know why. Riptide loves smoke. RevPro loves smoke. Progress used to love smoke. I enjoy it to an extent, but it is very smoky in that building. So,
yeah, that's my one issue. Like the production's fine on this, but it's like this room is just like full of fucking smoke. Like they're setting off, like guys are coming out the pyro, but that's not the case. Just filled with smoke. But that's my only issue with that because I don't want to bury it because the production itself is okay. The graphics and the all of that, I don't have a problem with, but. Off we go. This show, from the awesome opener right through the main event, I thought every match was either good or better. And this was one of the best no crowd shows I've seen in the entire COVID era, because these are no crowd shows. They taped them all in bulk. Who knows when? We talked about that last time. I don't need to get into that again. Holy shit, did this show rule? And they're going to keep getting my money as long as these shows are this good.
Oh, yeah. Every match matters. Every result matters. Every pin matters. Every move matters. It's like, yeah, they're building up so many matches. Will Osprey already has 2 matches in the future ready to go. After this, he talked about it after he beat Newman. You got like the women's got they have a nice little story being told there with, both those girls going after Giselle Shaw's title and kind of the feud between them. But Aaliyah James and Jamie Hayter and Bea Priestley and Giselle Shaw have their own little thing going. You got, Ricky Knight Jr. who's trying to prove himself and move up the ladder, presumably move up to heavyweight because he's going to face Will Ospreay, who he challenged the other night. You got Michael Oku turning heel in the main event. Like, dude, there's in 5-6 matches they've told like 10 stories. It's like just exactly to what we were talking about last week, where like a lot of wrestling companies don't book anymore. They just have matches. They don't book. They don't tell stories. RevPro can't help but tell stories. They have like 15 matches set up for the next 3 weeks. It's like, Jesus Christ. Everyone's related. Everyone has something going on with the other guy, and it's perfect.
This is the best indie in the world right now, and it's not even close. They are lapping the field. That's how great these shows are. This one in particular. Everything, Rich, the stuff you didn't watch. Brendan White and Kenneth Halfpenny. Is there a more British name than Kenneth Halfpenny?
Yeah, Kenneth Halfpenny is aggressively British.
So these are contenders, and, they're young lions or whatever, and they had a match. This is like their second match, and Halfpenny, like, is tempted to take shortcuts but won't. Brendan White is more than willing to take the shortcut if the opportunity presents itself. So they even have this story going where Halfpenny cut a promo. He's like, You this is a bullshit win. You're cutting corners out here, and I'm just trying to be the better man. So even in like the contender matches, they're telling little stories.
I'm telling you, they're like they're telling too many stories. I'm like, oh man, like every time I'm like, oh yeah, this guy did that and that guy. Like, I love it, dude. More of this. It's not hard either, Joe. It's not hard. It's just have a match result matter, write it down, and say okay, this, and just have a little bit of a. It's not that.
And this is what we're doing. This is our direction. Dan Maloney's been on fire. This guy, I'm telling you, is going to be a star. And he beat Joel Redman here, and you would expect these two to have a very good match, and they did. But unfortunately, on like a 6-match show, this is like the 5th best match because this show fucking ruled. So we get into the stuff where you can jump in, and we have Will Ospreay versus Callum Newman. Oh, my God. Teacher versus student. How fucking awesome.
Oh, my God, this was great. I was talking about it at the beginning of the show. The first minute is these guys doing kind of the typical like fish out of water spot, like you'd see, the Di Malenko, Eddie Guerrero thing, the classic where like they know each other's moves and they're bouncing out of the way. But I'm telling the way that they do this is better than I've ever seen it done before. I swear to God, they do 20 things in a minute, counter it each, and it's just the precision, the speed at which they do that is fucking next level. It's incredible.
Yeah, and you can't say enough about Osprey. I think he's the best. I think he's the best wrestler in the world.
Yeah,
I think he's the best wrestler in the world.
I was a little worried when I saw those pictures of him in quarantine, and he looked like he put on like 35 pounds of pure muscle. I was like, dude, I don't know if he could fly just as well. He's fine. He's perfect. So,
but forget him because he's gonna have a big G1 and all that. This Newman, he's still a teenager.
Yeah, what is he, like 17 years old or something?
He's like 17.
No, that's not good because he's really good.
He's so good, and a point I've been making, and I was talking to someone inside the business about this kid last night or night before. Was that last night? It was last night.
I think it was last night, but yeah. It
was really fucking late. It was it was last night.
I read it this morning if it makes you feel or whatever. So yeah, it was.
So last night, and it's like, I'm talking about this guy, and I didn't see Will Ospreay as a 17-year-old, but I saw Will Ospreay, 18 months into his career or whatever. And this kid is ahead of where Will Ospreay was at the same stage of their careers. And I don't even think it's close because Will Ospreay at that stage of his career was just a flippy-do backyarder out there doing his spots, not selling a thing. His first big feud was against Matt Sydal in this promotion. And if you go watch those matches, it's like he didn't sell anything. It was, he's just doing his spots.
Yeah.
This kid, and that was like 3-4 years into his career. This kid is like, for all intent and purpose, a rookie, and is so far advanced of where Ospreay was at the same stage of their careers. He is scary good at this stage. I mean, he has a chance. He has a chance to be great. I mean, he does. As good as he is already. And this match was just exactly what it should have been. I went notebook on this. I don't see how you can. I mean, it's everything you want out of this match.
Easy 4 for me. Easy.
And the work was phenomenal. And the fact that this Newman kid can keep up with a guy like Osprey is something else. I mean, I have my eye on him, and I've been spreading the word to anyone who will listen inside of wrestling that this is a guy that you need to have your long-term eye on if you're being responsible about running a professional wrestling.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm in his DMs and asking, "Hey, pal, what's your number just in case we need it?" Yeah, that needs to happen today. If you're running a company. I mean,
you got to pay attention to this kid and not let him slip through the cracks. The women's tag.
I did want to say real quick on the Newman Osprey match. One thing I wanted to point out to you, another thing, kind of a callback to an old flagship thing that we talked about. But the first thing, I love the structure of the match too, and that's another reason, is that it wasn't Will Osprey getting taken to his absolute limit by Newman. What happened is Newman got a little bit of an advantage, hit the Os cutter. Will Osprey kicked out and said, "Oh no, fuck that, dude." And then when he did that, was said, "All right, I was having fun. We were playing, doing this. Now you're done. You fucking." Stormbreaker, this hidden blade, boom, boom, boom. Now you're done. 1, 2, 3. Not a bunch of kickouts. When he wanted to finish it, he finished it. Once Newman went a little too far and started to kind of maybe get Will a little bit on the heels, he said, "Okay, no, I'm the teacher. You're the student. I'm gonna beat you now." So I love the structure of that. It didn't need a bunch of fucking kickouts. It didn't need to be 25 minutes long. It just needed to be 8 minutes. Very well told story. And the thing that I actually found this out last week, and I want to bring it up again this week, is I went to Callum Newman's Twitter page, just kind of look at a little bit of what he was doing or whatever, and it speaks to something that you talked about many years ago on the flagship, is the hidden gem, the hidden market for future pro wrestlers is gymnastics, right?
Yep.
This guy says, this is a tweet from a week or so ago. He says, "I learned all my flippy stuff with Reset Lab Fitness. They are the best. Reset Lab Fitness is an adult gymnastics class." It's like a gym that does adult gymnastics classes in East London. They specialize in tumbling, acrobatics, strength, and conditioning. So
it's such a great base, and it's not about the flippy doos. It's about the body control.
Yeah, and by the way, dude's got an incredible body already at whatever age he is.
It's about the body control that all the gymnasts have and the core strength.
Yeah, core strength, balance, explosiveness, being able to jump off your, just create that height. No matter what you do, it's everything. It just teaches you all that stuff. People think that we want to see a bunch of gymnasts flying around and they're all 110 pounds doing flippy doos. It's not what we're saying though. But like gymnasts have incredible. I mean, anybody that actually knows real gymnasts or knows real male gymnasts or whatever, if female gymnasts to the same extent, knows that they're not these skinny little flippy. They're fucking built like.
They are brick shit.
Yeah, go talk to a gymnast. Go talk to a college gymnast. Go talk a male or female. They'll beat your ass because they're way stronger than you can even fathom, because they can do shit that's like almost like your body shouldn't be able to do. They jump higher, faster, quicker. They flip quick. I mean, it's just incredible what gymnast bodies can do and what they can do athletic wise. So that's why we say that it's a great base for a pro wrestler, because a lot of the stuff that you do in pro wrestling outside the flippy will all, being a gymnast is it teaches you strength and conditioning. It teaches you, upper body strength. It teaches you core strength, as you said. It teaches you, explosiveness off your legs. It's just, the amount of stuff that you can learn from doing it is incredible. So I think people get this wrong idea of what gymnasts actually look like and actually are, because no, they're fucking monsters.
It's the perfect base for pro wrestling. You got to be super athletic, core strength, balance, all that. But yeah, he's got a big future, and it was a great pro wrestling match. They went out there and told a great story around flippy doos.
Yeah,
and when you have that, it's it was a great match. And then we had the Osprey's promo, where, like you said, he talked about all his future opponents that he has lined up. The women's tag, B. Priestley and Jamie Hayter came out as Oedo Tai, the Stardom gimmick, against Aaliyah James and Giselle Shaw, which was set up on the previous show, and the heels won it here. And now B. Priestley, because she pinned Giselle Shaw, is demanding a title shot. So again, we're setting things up. This was a good match marred by a bad finish. B. Priestley blew the finish, and it looked like shit. But outside of that, I thought it was wrestled with good intensity. Aaliyah James is kind of catching up to the other three, I think.
Yeah, she was definitely a step behind at the beginning of the match, but you could tell as the thing was going on, she kind of caught pace, and you could see the building blocks there. She's still super young as well. I forget how young She's
in there with 3 really good wrestlers.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I mean, and I don't even love Bea Priestley. I think she's a little sloppy at times. I think the other 2 are maybe a bit. Hayter is for sure. I think Hayter is phenomenal. But yeah, this was good. It's just that it had the bad finish, which kind of marred it.
They had a good idea with the finish, because what the idea was going to be is that Aaliyah James would get, taken out of the match, and then Giselle Shaw would take a pinfall, not because she, isn't a deserving, the assumption is that she probably could have won had James been there, but the fact that she was 2-on-1, she just got overwhelmed by Bea Priestley and Hayter, and that's how she lost, which is a great way to build up for the future title. Again, it's not that hard. Wrestling is so easy, but now we have a future title shot with Bea Priestley going for Giselle Shaw's title, so.
Yeah, and then we had our main event, which was the unification match with the RevPro Cruiserweight title and the Speed King title that Ricky Knight Jr. came in with. And like you said, it was the big turn at the end. Well, I don't even know if it's necessarily a turn. It's the seeds for a turn, because Connor Mills throws Ricky Knight Jr. off the top rope. The referee doesn't see it. And then Oku hits the frog splash to win. I think the idea is he's going heel.
Right. Which actually, I wanted to point out. I didn't mean to say heel turn off the bat at the beginning when I was talking about this. But
yeah,
I love this sort of style of telling the story. If you're going to use interference, use it this way. And I think this is the way that this sort of heel turn people have gotten away from. This I remember when I first started watching wrestling was a lot of the heel turns. Or when I go back and watch old school wrestling, a lot of the heel turns are the guy that's going to turn heel. Something just kind of happens and he takes advantage of it. And he's just kind of like, hey, look, I didn't know. I have no idea. And then it leads in many different directions. Oku could get pissed that Ricky Knight Jr. thinks he's cheating. And he could be like, look, dude, I didn't have anything to do with it. I saw you down and I pinned you and I won. Like that's all I looked to do. Or, you can use that to become the heel turn where he says, yeah, no, I knew he did it. And I did it because I wanted to beat you. Like there's so many different directions you can go with this sort of thing. But essentially what happened was Ricky Knight Jr. gets to the top rope. Connor Mills, who came down with Oku, tosses him off while the referee was distracted or doing something with Oku. And Oku gets up and just sees Ricky Knight Jr. on the ground and just goes, okay, and then goes for the frog splash. And after the match, Ricky Knight Jr. is like, well, what the fuck, dude? Why'd you cheat? And Oku's like, look, dude, I don't know. I saw you down. I hit the frog splash. I won. You lost. Get over it. And I love that because you can go in different directions there. You can go with Ricky Knight Jr., becoming the hated heel by getting really pissed that Oku took these advantages. You can have Oku turning. There's so many different directions you can go, and I love this sort of storytelling because now we have immediately he's not a turn. Immediately Oku's not smiling, cackling, and laughing because I'm so evil, I'm such a heel type stuff. He's oblivious right now, and now the intrigue is what happens in the coming weeks and months with Oku. Does he go full heel, or is this just something that they use as a catalyst for another story? So I love that aspect of it. Yeah.
So Ricky Knight Jr. is another one. I mean, he's a kid. I mean, he might still be a teenager if I'm not mistaken. And he's great too.
Oh, I thought okay, not to be mean to anybody. I thought he blew away Oku in this match.
Oh, okay. No, you're not wrong. Here's the thing with Oku. He, more than almost anyone in wrestling, loses a ton with the no fans. Because Michael Oku's biggest strength as a wrestler is crowd connection. Yes. He's got that rare thing where he just has this incredible crowd connection, the thing you can't teach, okay? And that, without that, he loses something. He is not like, he has some ways to go as a worker. Like there are things about his work where he is not particularly refined as a worker.
No, he was real sloppy in this match. He blew up about 2 minutes in and had to recover almost the entire match as well. Ricky Knight really had to kind of lead him through the rest of the match. And Ricky Knight, they kept talking about how his cardio was so good. And it's like, it was fine. Like, it was good. But yeah, Oku blew up and just couldn't get back on track after that. They started with a really hot sequence and Oku was sucking air the rest of the time. And I get it. It's quarantine, with COVID or whatnot. I get it. But it's just, yeah, it really affected the match because he blew up and he could not get back on track.
This is the second or third time I've seen Oku in a singles match with someone I would consider a peer. Same experience level, even though he's older than you think. He's like mid-20s, I think.
Yeah, Ricky Knight Jr. is 20 on the dot, by the way, in case you're wondering. So, Jesus Christ. Actually, it's good we got all these fucking assholes out of the Brit Rest scene. We got some good youngsters coming up here,
God, some of the people on this show, I mean, they're so good. But this is the second or third time I've seen him in a match with people I would call his peers from an experience level, where the other wrestler was clearly better than him from a mechanical standpoint. I thought Ricky Knight Jr. blew him away in this match.
He was fantastic.
Sounds like you agree. And I saw him have a match against Scotty Davis last year, another guy who's like 18 or 19 or whatever, same experience level. Same thing. Davis just was clearly the better wrestler. But Oku has the crowd connection that these guys don't have yet.
Right. And I don't mean to dog Oku at all. I think he's got a solid prospect for sure.
Oh, he's a great prospect.
Yeah.
Listen, he's a must-book guy in that scene. It's like, because there's an undeniable crowd connection there. And don't get me wrong, he's pretty good. But his weaknesses become glaring when look, you're talking about guys like, RKJ and Scotty Davis, and these guys are like prodigies. So, but so he's you're comparing him to like guys that are like fucking great, but it is what it is, but it's like, I don't think he's completely outclassed though. It's not like he doesn't belong in the same ring, but he was clearly not the worker in this match that RKJ was. RKJ is one of the fasting rising stars this year. I mean, pre-COVID, he was starting to break out in RevPro. He had that great match against shit. I got my notebook right in front of me. In what was that match in? I could probably. I'm at his cage match if you need. So do you remember? You remember the date? It was Robbie X in February.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
It was the February show, which was also a great show. It had the Will Osprey Zack Sabre Jr. match, which was
High Stakes. High Stakes is the name of the show for people that are curious.
Yeah.
So.
Oku wrestled Phantasmo on that show, and that was a great match. And that's where Oku won the title, remember? And I think that's where Oku won the Cruiserweight title. And Ricky Knight
that
Jr.
is, yeah, that is indeed where he won it, yeah.
And there was a Ricky Knight Jr. versus Robbie X match where I was like, this Ricky Knight Jr., I need to pay more attention to him. And, so he was coming along even before COVID. But, I enjoyed this match too, even though I agree with you. It was pretty obvious that Oku was a slight step behind him. But
they botched a few things here and there, but I think ultimately the story and the match itself recovered from that a lot. I was way into it in the final few minutes and didn't care that, there was a few slip-ups at the beginning or whatever. So that it didn't matter in the end.
I'm kind of disappointed they didn't tell us what's coming up on whatever's next. I assume they taped more than just these two. Last time they set up the card for this show, this time they didn't do that. So I don't know if they've announced anything on Twitter or whatnot, but I am all in on RevPro right now.
Yeah.
These two shows, I've just reinvigorated indie wrestling for me. I mean, I'm so into this. So hopefully they can stay on a roll and keep this going. Now, if you don't want to pay the $10 for them, I was told that they do show up on the RevPro streaming service, but the first show showed up in 2 days. This show hasn't shown up yet, so you just don't know when they're going to pop up. And the streaming service, I think, is only like $7.49 a month or something.
I think, yeah, somewhere around there. I forget exactly, but yeah.
So it's actually a little cheaper than just buying these shows a la carte, but either way. But man, a hell of a fucking show. This is easily one of the best shows of the COVID era worldwide.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'm going to watch the rest of the matches if I can. But yeah, the final 3 matches stood out, head and shoulders above a lot of the other stuff.
And I'm
a lot
telling
of the
you,
other crap I've been watching lately. So.
And I'm telling you, you didn't even see the best match.
Yeah, which is nuts.
This Haskins match, it's so good. It's so good. But all 3 of the matches you didn't see are worth a watch.
Nice, yeah. It's awesome to watch. So we went a half an hour with just RevPro UK, and I'm not upset about it. So we're right up against it. Real quick thoughts, or do you want to skip United Wrestling Network, talk about it next week, or is it even worth talking about? Yeah, we can do it in 2 minutes. It's fine. Yeah.
Allegedly, it was a disaster live with the stream dropping out and everything. I watched it on demand, and it was fine. There was a couple jump cuts where it was like, okay, this is where the stream conked out. But look, it was good, solid wrestling.
Right. I'm not paying $8 a week for that, but it's solid.
But this is not anything I would pay for. It was good, solid wrestling. I felt bad for Aldis and Bennett. You could tell they were a little shook by the shitty circumstances of the show.
Well, it looked like they were running out of time too, because everything after the time limit draw with the Tribe and the Wolves 80s, which I think went long, and I think they did a shoot time limit draw on that. I couldn't tell, but kind of seemed that way.
What I think happened was they were running out of time and just rang the bell on them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it was a shoot time limit draw where they were just like, all right, guys, you got to get out of here. And then like Dickinson comes in and he beats a guy in 2 seconds. And then Joseph and like everything else from that point forward seemed like it was rushed like crazy once those 2 guys were in the ring and they ran out of time. So yeah, the timing was a mess. The production was a little bit of a mess. So
The only match that was terrible was Dan Joseph and Levi Shapiro. That stunk.
Oh, God.
The main event, though, I thought they worked hard and they had a physical match and they did what they could in the time that they had. And I really felt bad for them because those guys are both pros and they deserve better. And Aldis cut a post-match promo, and you know how great of a promo he is. And his promo stunk because he was shook. You could tell that he was shook. And he was stuttering over his words, and it wasn't a good promo. And that's a guy who cuts good promos in his sleep. So it just turned out to be a mess, and it's a horrible way to come out of the gate. It's a business model that cannot work anyway. It cannot work. And they're going to need more star power to even have a chance. I liked how they pushed Dickinson. He came out and cut a promo and was a heel and was saying, and then he came out and beat the guy up before the match and then beat him in a short squash. So I like the way they're presenting Dickinson. But, the rest of it was just a mix of West Coast indie guys and some guys you've seen on New Japan Strong like Jordan Clearwater.
Yeah.
Will Allday, who lost to Clearwater, I was given a little tip. He is a Booker T guy. He was a running back at Rice, so Division I running back, trained by Booker T, good fundamentals, and my Texas people tell me that he is worth keeping an eye on.
Okay.
So, and he looked okay.
Yeah, he looked fine. Yeah, EJ Sparks, I liked him a lot in the opener with Hammerstone. Yeah, All Day looked good. Like, I think he cut the promo, and it's like he kind of sounds like a trainee. He's like, it's Will, you know what I mean? Like day one heel promo stuff.
Yeah. As a young wrestler.
Exactly. You got to take your lumps, and learn.
They're not all going to be Ben Carter and
Callum Newman. Yeah.
It's so you got, and to be fair, we haven't heard those guys cut promos.
That's true.
So, from that perspective, send them. Baby Rich, I'm telling you. Oh man. Unbelievable. I lost my train of thought.
That's fine. Yeah. One thing I was going to say about this show, and I referenced it a little bit when I talked about the Ring of Honor thing, is one of the weird things, and I want to see, I do want to see how this kind of progresses if we watch Primetime Live moving forward. If those free codes come in, I don't know if I'm paying $8 for this a week, but one thing I am noticing about the show that was a little weird to me is it felt like the continuation of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood with a few other names in there. Like, you have all the announcers, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. A lot of the commentators are talking like we know who the Tribe and the Wolf Zadies are. And the Tribe and the Wolf Zadies feud. And, this is, this person that was in, and we've seen her and we've seen him and we know what he is. And I'm like, no, we don't. This is supposedly United Wrestling Network Primetime Live #1. I don't know who EJ Sparks is. I don't know who Will Allday is. I know nothing about the Tribe and the Wolf Zadies. Like, tell me, show me. Don't just say, oh, well, we saw, oh man, the Tribe and the Wolf Zadies, they've had a feud for. It's like, it felt like your town got a network tape of World Class is now showing in your town, and you're like, what the fuck? And then you just get a tape, and it's just like, all right, we've seen this. And you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, I think they, and more importantly, needed to tell these stories. And Dickinson, they did. Dickinson was established right off the bat. Here's what this guy is. Here's his motivations. Here's what he's pissed off about. Here you go. Aldis and Mike Bennett, I think they did a good job with it. But again, it was like, who these guys are. You know their stories. You know why they're here type stuff. And I don't think they did a good job with a lot of the other people on the roster. They didn't tell the stories. And it felt like if you weren't watching Championship Wrestling from Hollywood or you didn't watch the NWA, you would have no idea. And this is a brand new company. This is night one, technically, of this company. I thought they did a pretty poor job of kind of getting you ready and getting you, experience and knowledgeable about all these guys. So
I think it's NWA, it's Hollywood, it's Championship Wrestling from Arizona, because like the Tribe tag team are from Championship Wrestling from Arizona. And it's just like this conglomeration of guys from different, that's why it's United Wrestling Network. It's like a collection of all three, or there may even be more promotions involved. And you're right, they assume you know who they are. I don't know. On one hand, I don't think you should talk down to the viewer and you should let them catch up. On the other hand, you're right, though, because these are not well-known commodities.
They're household names. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and it's like, did you recognize the Hawaiian Lion? That's the guy from All Japan like 13 years ago who you may not have been watching All Japan at that time, no, but he had an All Japan run like in 2006 or 7 where he teamed with Taiyo Kia, who also obviously is from Hawaii. So that was the kind of the connection there. And he used to be ripped like shredded.
Well, he's definitely not that now. I'll tell you that. So
yeah, my boy bad dude Tito was in that match.
Yeah.
Look, all these matches were pretty good.
They were fine. Yeah, everything was fine on the show. And to your point, like it's not necessarily that I want them to talk down to you, but the idea was like it felt like a continuation of another show.
But here's the other thing: why do I care about any of this?
Right, exactly.
And that's what it comes down to. Like we just talked about ROH. They made you care about it. Why do I care? What's and some they gave some guys some promo time, to be fair, but it's like for the most part, what do you think of Camille and her new physique?
It's I liked her better with her old physique for sure, which she had in NWA for sure. That once she's done with competition, I think it'll probably go back to that. But the competition bodybuilding is just so fucking weird. I can't even begin to I deal with it at my job, and it's very strange. I don't get it whatsoever, and I think their bodies are very, very strange when they're in that. So yeah, I don't know.
She's okay. She's got some tools. I mean, NWA does good things with her.
Yeah, no, for sure. Bringing
her along slowly. She's got some tools. There's something there with her. I didn't like Heather Monroe's really cringy manager. I really wasn't into that.
It's like you always describe championship wrestling from Hollywood. It's half
yes.
like, decent prospects and then like the shindiest dude you've ever imagined in your world. Just like day one heel manager bullshit, day one babyface stuff, like just what you would see at your local indie for sure.
Don't knock my man Howdy Price though.
He was kind of fine, yeah.
He didn't sing his song though. Well, if you got no money, don't say howdy. If you got no honeys, don't say howdy. If you got no... I don't remember how the rest goes. Howdy, hey! That's a little throwback to the old TV reviews, Rich.
Howdy Price.
Only the OGs will remember that. Howdy Price song.
Yeah, those were dark days when you had to cover championship wrestling from Hollywood, but...
Good place to end it.
That is absolutely. All right, that is it for the Voice Wrestling Flagship Podcast. As we mentioned, patreon.com/Voice of Wrestling, G1 reviews, N1 reviews, Champion Carnival reviews, Retro G1s, all that stuff going on. Q&As throughout the rest of the month as well. Tons of stuff going on there at patreon.com/Voices of Wrestling. Also voicesofwrestling.com for all of our G1 previews, reviews, all the other stuff. As we mentioned, John Carroll, incredible preview up at voicesofwrestling.com. So definitely if you want to get ready for the G1, that is the place to go. And for Joe Lanza, I'm Rich Craich. We'll talk to you guys next time on the Voice of Wrestling Flagship Podcast. Take care.